call to order the regular meeting of the governing board. Please rise for the pledge. If you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap twice. Okay, please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. So let the record show the time is 7:02. Let the record also show that all board members are present. I need a motion to adopt the agenda.
I move we adopt the agenda with the following changes. Move item 6C and D to after 4 old business. Move item 7C to after 6C and D. Pull item B from the consent agenda, and the minutes will be brought back at the April 24th meeting for approval, and remove item G for separate consideration.
Repeat that.
Okay. Move item 6C and D, which is approval of the new principal, to after 4 old business. Move item 7C, which is the
Preview for Project Momentum.
so after that, per Dr. Finch's request, to after 6C and D. Ms. Taylor requested that we remove item B, the approval of the minutes, and bring them back on April 24th.
So 8B you want to remove totally for next board meeting?
Yes, from the consent agenda.
The executive session ones, that's the ones we're removing?
For all of
Yes. No, just the executive.
The work session, she said.
The work session.
Okay.
And then I request,
Hold on.
sorry.
5B. Not 8. No, 8 is
Right,
discussion.
5B is, sorry, I
5B.
apologize if I said 8, I meant 5.
There was an issue with uploading the minutes, so she requested that we remove them and bring them back on April 24th.
And then I requested that we move item 5G from the consent agenda for separate consideration because I had some questions.
Second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so the motion carries 5-0. So before we begin governing board reports, I'd like to welcome everyone who came to the board meeting tonight. And thank you for coming to our board meeting. Just a little FYI, I know that you are here because you have very strong feelings about public education, and you have strong feelings about Deer Valley, and you have a great deal of commitment to our district. We will be discussing items tonight about which you may have some strong feelings. What I'm going to request is that you keep sort of the verbal interaction to a minimum so that we can get through the business and have a fruitful, productive discussion as a board. If you find something that you feel very strongly about, if you could please just text emojis to your friends. I hear there's a wide variety of emojis. I think there's one for every emotion you might feel tonight. So that would be my request. So thank you. So we will go ahead and start with governing board reports, and let's start with Ms. Tweedy.
I'm going to be extremely brief because there's so many people here, and these many of you may have not been to a meeting recently, but they can drag on for a long time. So with that in mind, I'll just be real brief. I want to let you know that I did go to the Red for Ed rally at the Capitol and walked with many of you that are sitting here tonight. And I also teach in another district, so fully support the Red for Ed movement, and I'm also participating at my own school where I teach. So, share that with you.
There is an emoji for that. I've seen it.
So,
There's two for
There's
that.
two? Okay.
and with that being said, I also want to say, on top of, I do understand, I did teach in Deer Valley for almost 10 years, and I do understand the frustration that many of the underpaid employees feel, and I'm assuming that's why many of you are here. I absolutely think Deer Valley has to do better, too. It's not just our government. I mean, it's not just the state. Absolutely. But my promise was to be brief, so I will say I do feel extremely encouraged. I feel a lot more encouraged than I did last year because in speaking to Dr. Finch, I do believe that he agrees with us that the people who make this district great need to be our priority. We obviously don't have the funding to address every concern, but it does not mean we can't do better. And I will fully support us doing better and request that we do. So thank you for being here, and just know you have my support.
Right. Mrs. Fisher.
I'll try and be brief, but I'm rarely brief, as Ms. Tweedy is. First, I want to take a note and say, if you missed it, the art show up in Anthem was wonderful. And I want to thank the teachers that were there the day I visited for taking time to discuss various topics with me, because it's always very enlightening when you start hearing what they're missing or what they need. I, too, was at Red for Ed. There's Miss Tweedy and Miss Frank and I made an effort to take a picture together with some teachers so that we can let our teachers know that we are there for them. And in whatever way we can, we are. The last 5 to 6 months have been filled with turmoil of deciding between illegal actions and insubordination. I'm glad that is done. That was for me, not Deer Valley. But it left me questioning public education. Could it survive? Would it survive? And does it matter? I want to thank the Deer Valley and the Phoenix Union teachers who helped me through that, especially the choral choir. Sorry, I don't know whether you call it choral or choir, but the choir teachers welcomed me into their PD on Friday, and it was just amazing to spend hours with those teachers and their dedication and seeing what it was. But it got me thinking, you know, what can we do? We can only do so much. But it got me digging a little bit, and I wanted to give, and I'll keep it very brief, but a history. When Ms. Tweedy and I ran for office in 2014, the governing board that year gave a one-time 1% payment. And I remember how angry I was, and everybody else I think was, that they didn't put it in the base salary, because that meant that next year you started again with nothing. So when I did take office in 2015, whatever was going to be available, I wanted to make sure I pushed into your salaries, and we did. It's kind of weird when you're there that first year, and that year was a 1%. I'm thinking that's not even cost of living, but it was what we believed we could do. I pushed for it to be in the base salary. What really bothered me that year was that summer. There was an entire reclassification of positions, and I fought it. If you ever see any advertisement, any article with me in the newspaper, there's a picture with me like this, kind of having my say about why I had an issue with reclassifications when we could only give 1%. Needless to say, Mr. Baer, Ron Baer, voted no, as did I, and it passed on a 3-2 vote. In 2016, we did get money, thank God, something, and we did what we could to fix the scatter, Jim can say it better than I can, scatter plot, and try and make things better. Not everybody got a terrific raise. Some people got a very terrific raise. The average that year was a 4.2, and I'm only using the teachers' numbers because I assumed most of you would be. And I was fairly pleased with that we could at least do something, and we could get that to the classrooms. We could get it to our teachers. That summer, again, there was reclassifications of non-teaching positions. And again, I fought it. And again, Mr. Bear and I voted no. And again, it passed on a 3-2 vote. You want to talk about frustration? Sit up here knowing or believing that you need to do something right and not being able to. Last year, we were joined by Ms. Tweedy and Ms. Frank, and we did a 1.5%, 1%, and then they threw in the extra 0.5. That year, there were no reclasses. There was no longer a 3-2 vote to approve. We receive questions all the time. Why do you look at things? Why do you look at travel? Why do you look at, it doesn't matter what. You're micromanaging, the message I want to clearly give to all of you, there is no desire, at least not mine, and I don't believe there's desire of any member of this board to want to micromanage. But we have to get money into our teachers and our salary and our classified staff as well. And they have given us nothing else. So the only thing we can do is look at everything. Look for efficiencies, seek to find those efficiencies. We have fabulous staff in our administration, in our teachers, in our classified, and we serve a fabulous group of kids that become young adults and then become teachers or something else. I ask for your patience. I ask for you to stand with us as we stand with you now and in the future. We will fight for more money into public education. There are districts that have plenty of money. I sat down and figured out if we had the funding that a certain other district has, we would have an additional $38,000 per employee to give. There is a problem in Arizona, and the problem is a disparate funding. The problem is inadequate funding, and the problem is looking at the bigger picture and doing what we can to fix it. So I will continue to stand with my teachers and my classified staff as well, and my administrators, because at the end of the day, the kids do need us all. But I ask that you stand with us and that you talk to us. Don't get mad at us. Contact us. Talk to us. We may not agree on 100 things, but on whether or not we need more money in your paychecks, I think we all agree on. That's it for me.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. Mrs. O'Brien.
Thank you, Ms. Frank. I returned late last evening from San Antonio, where I was fortunate enough to be able to attend the National School Boards Association. I was a delegate for the Delegate Assembly and was able to help form that association's policy for which their lobbyists will work in Washington, D.C. on behalf of public education. It was a phenomenal opportunity to talk about items such as school safety and crime prevention, teacher funding, among other topics, including equality for all of our students in our schools. Upon returning, I was met with some phone calls and some texts regarding where I stand or if I stand with our teachers. So to say that things have changed a lot since our last meeting in March really would be an extraordinary understatement. The Red for Ed movement transformed from a couple of teachers in the East Valley to a statewide grassroots effort demanding an appropriate and sustainable funding stream for public education. I also attended the Red for Ed teach-in at the Arizona State Capitol. It was an amazing turnout of teachers, students, parents, and community members. I understand that there's some question about my support of our teachers, and I want to be unequivocally clear that I support all of Deer Valley's professional, passionate, hardworking, and selfless teachers. Last week was a very proud moment when I received a phone call from my 22-year-old daughter who's a student at NAU. And many of you know that, who know me, know she is studying to be a high school teacher, a high school math teacher. So she's getting a math degree and her secondary ed teacher. And last week she received her confirmation to student teach starting in August. So I'm very excited for her to be embarking and teaching at this time. So I stand with all of you as well as with her. As a board member, I cannot ignore, and one of the things I want to say is I've been questioned several times about Proposition 301 money, so I'd like to address that. I can't ignore the need to use part of those funds to ensure new teacher salaries remain competitive so we can fill the vacancies, as well as make sure that we provide highly trained teachers for Deer Valley students. So 301 money is being used to do both of those things in addition to pay veteran teachers. But I hope that you will all know that I advocate for you, for our students, for our classified staff, for all of the groups that are interdependent on each other to make Deer Valley the extraordinary school district it is, and it is an honor to serve you. Thank you.
And thank you, Mrs. O'Brien. Mrs. Ordway.
Wow. Okay, so we'll keep it brief. I try to do that. What I want to talk about, since most of the Red for Ed was talked about, is how proud I am that we are using walk-ins at this moment in time to show that our district does care about our students, and they will put them first by coming to work even another hour early or stay another hour late. So I had the honor to have my car painted on Saturday before the Great Art Show by one of the teacher's students, and I can't remember, I know you're here. Or anyway, so she had started to paint the state of Arizona on the back of the car, and it didn't come out exactly right, but it started looking like a watering can. So I said, just have some drops of water come out of that and have a little plant, because when people think you're buried, like they can shut you up and you're buried and your thoughts aren't going to come out, guess what? We're all seeds. So go ahead and bury me, because I'm going to grow. So we are with you. We want you to be with us. There are some decisions that are made that has to look at an entire district. So sometimes you agree, sometimes you don't. But as long as you know that we're making our decisions based on facts and information that we get from all different groups, we're not making it against anyone. We're making the decisions for everyone. So maybe we could all get like, oh, Jenny, you didn't go yet. But can we just get one round of applause for Red for Ed right now? And just one more thing. So I've been on this board for almost 10 years, and I've worked in this district in the capacity of a servant leader 6 months after I moved in when my daughter was 6 months old. So I have been learning how things work within a classroom, a campus, the district office down at the state for a long time. And for the first time, I feel like there are people with me, and I'm not all by myself with the regular people that you see down at the legislature. When they see you guys down there, or they see you grading your papers at the mall on a Sunday, that's very powerful. Because I can say what I think you mean, but I'm a governing board member. They might listen to me. But to see the people that are doing it stand out, that makes more of an impact. So again, thank you very much for the opportunity to serve you for this many years, and we are all for you. So that's it. It was kind of brief, I know. What? Go ahead, Jenny.
Okay. Well, one of the perks of being board president is I got to say some remarks at the beginning, and now I get to say some more remarks. I also attended the Red for Ed rally. I'm very encouraged by the outpouring of support from parents and community members. And as I look out in the room tonight, I'm reminded of the many board meetings I attended sitting where you guys are sitting wearing red. And I'm actually really glad I made the decision not to get rid of my red clothes when I left working for the district. I'm feeling like validating my decision to keep those outfits. I also remember in 2015 when teachers were given a one-time bonus and it was not added to the base pay. And I remember that because that was the board meeting where I decided I would just start to look for another job. After being in the district for 9 years, I finished my 10th year and left to pursue employment at a position that paid more because I couldn't pay for groceries after I had finished paying my bills on what I was making as a Deer Valley teacher. So I've sat where you're sitting, I've walked where you're walking, and I totally lived what you're living. And I ran for the board because I wanted to make it a priority for this district. I wanted employees, both certified, classified, bus drivers, you name it, to be a priority ahead of spending on programs. And I think if you look at my voting record, you will see that I have held true to that. The legislature does need, in my opinion, to restore funding. But we as a governing board also need to ensure that we are putting students and employees as a priority when we decide how our money is spent. And I think I will leave my remarks there. Oh, and I took some vacation time to walk at Legend Springs tomorrow morning, so I'm excited. So thank you for the invitation. And if anybody wants to send me pictures of their walk-ins, I heard there was a little video circulating on social media that somebody put together. I don't know who, but maybe we could make an even better one. Okay, so that's it for my remarks. I will turn it over to what? Possibly. Okay. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Finch.
All right, thank you for coming. As you know, I've been zooming around here in my first year. I was wondering what we're going to do in our second year. Zooming around, seeing a lot of your classrooms, and that's important to me. That's where I intersect with you, and you can corner me and ask me questions, and it happens all the time, and I appreciate it. It's not a problem. That's my job, and that's something I believe in. So, again, thanks for coming today. Yes, I've had many intersections with the Red for Ed folks, so that's great. And we'll continue to do that, especially with the leadership as we work together to make sure that we ensure that student learning's number one. So I'm looking forward to our path into the future. Today I was down at the governor's office. I actually texted him or left a message on Friday night and said we need a plan and we need to get superintendents together, and got a text that Sunday night, said can you be here today, Tuesday, to start talking about that. So that's really my role, is try to impact the legislature, try to impact the governor. And obviously we want to be competitive with our neighbors. We want to be honor all the staff at Deer Valley, the great employees we have, and obviously raise the bar for our teaching staff, as we are not competitive as a state. This is actually a national problem, but I think Arizona's the leader in being the bottom of the barrel, unfortunately. So that's one of the things I inherited as your new superintendent. So I'm looking forward to it. I think we're going to have a struggle here, but I think what I'm looking for is a plan. I need some hope. I need to see a future. And so that's really what I'm asking the leaders in downtown. What can you tell us as we look forward? We don't want gimmicks that just fix the problem today. We want a future look. So that's kind of was my message today with the governor and about 18 other superintendents that happened today. So again, thanks for coming. 2 other news items I think were already mentioned. I did pick my choices for the art show, so we have some winners. They'll be announced here pretty soon. That was a nice venue up in Anthem. I appreciated that. It worked out good. And thanks to the Anthem Mall, too, to adjust quickly when we lost our place at Noterra. And also want to thank all the teachers that are on top of AZ Merit. That's rolling, and thanks to our students. Make sure you do a good job. That's a reflection on our school system. So thanks again for all that you're doing, and thanks again for the Red for Ed leadership that I've been working with on making sure that we're making a path into the future that's a positive one for our students. So thanks for coming.
Oh, before we move on to item 3C, I do just want to mention we have a very large number of public comment requests tonight. So given that we have a 30-minute overall time limit, it's down to about a minute and a half per speaker. So if you think you might want to consolidate or have one person be a spokesperson, or if you want to go ahead and do your minute and a half, that's perfectly all right. I certainly remember the first time I got up at public comments to speak strongly to the board and the superintendent, and now I'm feeling like it's a little bit of karma coming back to me. So just FYI, so you can think about that before we get to public comments at the end. All right, so Mr. Miglerino, Fiscal and Business Services Report.
President Frank, members of the board, Dr. Finch, we have two reports to share with you this evening, starting with the student enrollment report for through March 21st, the 140th day of school this year. And this report shows that we're 0.5% below the same period of time a year ago in the number of students, which is tracking with what we have seen through the second semester of this school year. So if there's any questions regarding the student enrollment report, I'll move through to the district financial reports. So also included.
I'm sorry, Mr. Miglerino, I believe.
I'm sorry.
Mrs. Fisher
I was
has
trying
a question.
It's just really brief. I know I had sent in a request to see the 100th day. Do we have it in Vibe somewhere? Or in a report, the actual 100th day? Because that's what we're funded on, correct?
President Frank, Ms. Fisher, yes. So we are funded on the 100th day. I don't know that the reports are published. I believe they're on Thursday, Wednesday or Thursday of each week, so that they can be included in the update. So I don't know if we hit the 100th day exactly. We might be a day or two beyond. Okay. But it would have. We can certainly provide that in this week's update if you'd like. The closest one.
If we could get whatever we submitted for our funding, whatever our ADM was. Even that's fine. Can I get it on ADE?
So the reports that we share with the board each month are the enrollment reports. The average daily membership reports.
That's modified, you're right.
Would be what the Department of Education reports. There are current reports for April, and we would be happy to post those in.
I know where to find those, so if I could just get the 100th day, if you guys have it in whatever Thursday update.
Certainly.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Miglerino? Okay, all right, please move on.
For the actual financial reports, these are through March of this year, and we're showing a projected carry forward balance of just under $897,000. Comparing that to last month, we were at $869,000, so a slight increase month over month. Year over year, we're tracking almost in step with a year ago, so we were $880,000 worth of projected carry forward. The carry forward is coming. It's always good when we have a little bit of money left over. Again, that's on a more than $200 million budget, to put it in perspective, but it is coming from unfilled positions, so vacancies that we're not able to fill. So it's a good news, bad news story in that, yes, we are within our means, but it is unfortunately due to the fact that many of the staff that are working have to work a little bit harder because we are not fully staffed.
Do you know how many unfilled positions? I guess that would be a question for Mrs. Moffett, perhaps.
Yeah, we could provide that information. At this point, it changes at any given moment in time, right? So it's kind of difficult. We could provide a historical perspective, like yesterday's number, but by the time we would report it, it would probably be different.
Okay, all right, thank you. Other questions for Mr. Miglerino? Right, an estimate or an average. No further questions? I think you're getting off easy tonight, Mr. Miglerino.
Thank you.
Okay, so if there's no further questions, we'll move to item 3D, a report from Dr. Galligan on flexible learning models update.
President Frank, members of the board, Dr. Finch, and guests, tonight we bring back information on one of the flexible learning models shared at an earlier board meeting. This one is for the traditional school model that is to take the place of the Deer Valley Charter Academy. We will have a formal board preview of this item at the April 24th board meeting. As a reminder, the traditional model for DVUSD high school students is an enhanced version of what the Deer Valley Charter Academy offers. You can see what was shared with you at the previous board meeting. To address the board's concern over access, we would expand from one charter school location in the southwest area of the district now to 2 DVUSD locations, one in the northern and one in the southern regions. The question of transportation was brought up, and although transportation is not part of the Deer Valley Charter Academy, we have begun to look at possible ways to support students who may have transportation challenges. One of these could be possibly looking at the viability of campuses using their microbird for transportation. That would be one thing we would look into. Another board question was about the impact of 3 of our high schools, the 2 schools who will hopefully offer the traditional school model, and the 1 school losing the charter school from their campus. The impact of the traditional model to all of our high school campuses will be positive. Dr. Stulk and Mrs. Sutton have worked with us to create the initial DVUSD traditional school model. Mrs. Kim Crooks has expressed her support of the new location and feels that BGHS would be accessible to her students. Campus principals see this as an opportunity to provide even more options within DVUSD for students and families who need that face-to-face, outside of the school day solution. Students across the district who seek evening classes in a fast-track term can take advantage of the DVUSD offering with our own DVUSD teachers and curriculum. In addition, high school counselors have expressed that a traditional model is a necessity and would provide those opportunities for our students to stay on track for graduation due to this flexible option and the availability on 2 campuses. Deer Valley will serve notice to Deer Valley Charter Academy that the 2018-19 school year is the last year they will be located on a DVUSD campus. In line with Deer Valley Academy Charter School, credit recovery classes will be offered at no cost, as shared at the previous board meeting. Minimally, this would be for first attempt at credit recovery classes, but we would look into that further. We will have both a conservative and aggressive cost analysis with the traditional model for you at the formal preview on April 24th. And as I mentioned, in 2 weeks at the next board meeting, we'll have a full preview of this traditional model.
Thank you, Dr. Galligan. Questions? Mrs. Ordway.
Thank you, Dr. Galligan. On the first page where we're talking about the traditional model, brick and mortar, it says in-person, face-to-face instruction with smaller class sizes. The smaller class sizes in reference to, relevant to which class sizes? Are we talking about the high school during the day, or are we talking about Deer Valley Academy size classes?
Mrs. Frank, Ms. Ordway, that's a great question. Really, it is in looking at our comprehensive high school class sizes. We would mirror what is offered at Deer Valley Charter Academy, and just depending on the courses that were offered and the number of students, it would be less than what a comprehensive high school course would look like.
Just for your preview, to keep this in mind, one of the reasons why the students are successful at that academy is because it is a lot of one-on-one teaching. So if it's less than the comprehensive high school, depending upon what class, I mean, that could be good or it could be, who cares, because it'll be the same big number. So I just want to make sure, as you know, I had stated before, my hope is that we enhance this and keep what's going on there, because we have so many vulnerable students that utilize that are in the Deer Valley area, and I want to make sure that we are going to be able to send that message that even though it's not on your home campus, and I don't know because I don't have the numbers of how many students do come from each of the high schools, but that if you're homeless, if you're this, if you're that, if you have any of these issues, that we are going to make sure that you can get to this school. Because a lot of those kids would not graduate, and it's right in that school, and it's something that people have been used to since the 80s. So in order to make that change with enhancement, I just want to make sure we're not going to lose that portion of it.
President Frank, Mrs. Ordway, I would most certainly want to make sure that that was truly part of our traditional school. In addition, when we talk about enhancements, and I mentioned this before, we will be building in a component for social emotional support that is not built into that charter academy.
Right. I know that we're going to do many more great things with it, but I just want to, just a very nerve-wracking thing to have something that seems to have been working so well. We're going to change it, because sometimes when we say we're changing it the Deer Valley way, we lose a little bit of the stuff that was there before, and I just want to make sure those kids are taken care of, whoever they might be. So thank you.
Will do. Thank you.
Other questions? Mrs. Fisher.
Actually, just kind of because I'm sure she said that at the last meeting, but I was in the car and it was very hard to hear. I know that Deer Valley rocks and we can do it better, but there is a concern of losing kids. Now, historically, the kids from the other campuses came to Deer Valley, correct?
President Frank, Ms. Fisher, Deer Valley Charter Academy is at Deer Valley High School, so any students would go to
Right.
the after-school program at Deer Valley High School.
So we're not really, I mean, yes, it won't be at Deer Valley, because I know I had concerns with that at one point, and because I'm the board member that wanted the principal's input. But we're now going to have it at 2 campuses instead of just 1. So it will still be accessible to all students throughout the district in need, correct?
President Frank, Ms. Fisher, that is the intent, is to broaden the accessibility.
And it's done by our fabulous staff, right?
That would be correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Tweedy? So I guess kind of following up on Mrs. Fisher's, I had a question of who is going to staff the brick and mortar. Will priority be given to current Deer Valley employees?
President Frank, the intent is that it would be Deer Valley teachers who would apply and accept those teaching opportunities, yes.
Okay. Are there any thoughts as to whether that would be an addenda payment or how that would work?
President Frank, that's a wonderful question, and it will be built into that formal presentation preview on April 24th. I don't believe we've identified yet if it would be addenda or if it would be a different type of pay. We'll definitely get that figured out.
Okay. And then I think another thing that was important to several board members was that there was no cost to students. And I know you mentioned if you go back to that slide, it was the first attempt. No student cost for first attempt at credit recovery. So I would want to know what happens if they need a second attempt. Is there a cost associated with that?
President Frank, right now when we initially talked about that particular traditional model, it really was that let's say a student did not successfully pass the course at their high school, and they chose to go to this traditional school after school. Then that first time they would take the course would be at no cost to them. However, let's say they did not apply themselves or they just were not successful again. That would be something we would then want to talk to our board and Dr. Finch to say how many opportunities for free public education would we provide, and if it's at the board direction that any attempt at all times, then of course we'll build that in.
Okay. Because of course, anyone who teaches anything knows that sometimes students don't do well because they didn't put forth the effort. Sometimes they don't do well because they didn't have breakfast or lunch or dinner. Sometimes they don't do well because they're homeless, or sometimes they don't do well because their parent was screaming at them all night. I know of a young lady that happened to, and she had to get up and go to school the next day. So it's a lot of things that can impact student achievement that may or may not be a reflection on student effort or teaching. So it's important to me that students have the opportunity to be successful and at no cost. Ms. Tweedy?
Have we considered offering the drop back math classes so that I would hope we'd have less students failing math if they had the prerequisite knowledge when they took their math class?
President Frank, Ms. Tweedy, we are investigating that right now, and that will be part of this report also.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So stay tuned then. All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Galligan. Are there any further questions? Mrs. O'Brien? Sorry.
Thank you so much. No, not a problem. As part of the preview report that we'll see on the 24th, can you make sure that we understand what the financial impact is specifically to Deer Valley High School? I would imagine that they have rental fees and additional fees they might be receiving, or however all that works. So this could be a negative impact to their campus specifically. So we just understand that. And then in addition, to Ms. Frank's point regarding the costs and the recovery courses, my question is, right now, if a student takes a recovery course in high school, do they pay for it?
Mrs. Frank,
Not through the, no, if my question is, if we have a Deer Valley student that, let's say, fails Algebra 1, 2, second semester, they need to make that class up. What is that process and what does that look like?
Mrs. Frank, Ms. O'Brien, if it's in our brick and mortar, obviously it's just part of their schedule. If they were to take the course through Deer Valley Online Learning Program and their courses for the year were still within 6 courses a day, there would be no cost. If, however, the student had 6 courses in their brick and mortar and they chose to take a 7th course, which would be possibly a credit recovery, or they took the credit recovery and then took a different course, one of those courses would cost the normal Deer Valley Online Learning Program fee.
Okay, thank you for that
You're welcome.
clarification. I appreciate it.
So if there's nothing further, we will move on to item 4A, old business. The good news is there is no old business, so we'll save some time there. Can you guys hear me okay with the mic?
Okay,
Why
so
you're
it
not
is that
laughing at my
mic.
jokes or applauding my speeches. Okay. Is this not working either? We'll try mic number 3. All of them?
Hello.
I think we need speakers back there.
I've got 3. Is this an...
Dr. Finch, I'm getting texts that they can only hear Gail and Jim. Is there something wrong with our sound? Huh?
Oh, well, if I turn it on, is that better? Okay, all right, yay. I won't make you sit through my jokes and speeches again. You'll just have to watch that on live stream. Actually, it'll be up on the website. So we are moving on to item 6C, which we had moved up the agenda, and that is to approve the recommendation for the principal of New River School. Can I get a motion?
That's emotion. You want a motion.
Stand by.
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation for the principal of New River School.
Second.
Okay. So, Mrs. Moffett.
Good evening, President Frank, governing board members, Dr. Finch, and guests. Dr. McNeil on behalf of ALS, and I would like to introduce to you Courtney Fredlin. She's located right behind me. We'll let Courtney stand. I know that Dr. Finch is proud to recommend her as the principal of New River Campus. She comes to us from the Kyrene School District, but prior to being in Kyrene, she did work for the Deer Valley Unified School District. So she's home.
Any questions, comments from board members? Anything you'd like to
Awesome.
say?
That's my comment.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Ordway. No? All right. So I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Motion carries 5-0. Welcome back to Deer Valley. So we'll move on to action item 6D to approve the recommendation for the principal of Sonoran Foothills Schools. Can I get a motion?
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation for the principal of Sonoran Foothills.
Second.
Okay, Mrs. Moffett.
Let's harmonize. I'll go up. You guys go.
So this evening, I'd like to introduce to you Dennis Chartier. Again, Dr. McNeil and I know Dr. Finch are proud to recommend Dennis. He has been working in Deer Valley over the last, is it 6 years, Dennis? 7.5 years. And he comes from Michigan, where he worked as a teacher, a building level administrator, as well as at the district office as a superintendent. Came over to Arizona. We captured him back in as a part-time employee and have convinced him that administration is where we really need him, and we're proud to recommend him as the principal of Sonoran Foothills.
Thank you. Comments? Judges. All right. So I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So the motion carries 5-0. Congratulations. And I can't say welcome to Deer Valley because you're here already, but we're thrilled to have you in your new position.
Ms. Frank, can we say welcome Bobcat and Wildcat?
All right, so this brings us to item 5, the consent agenda, with the exception.
7C.
Wait, oh, yes, okay, I'm sorry. We have moved up a preview item, item 7C on Project Momentum. So we will have a presentation, preview item.
President Frank, members of the board, Dr. Finch, and guests, we will present an amazing partnership that will provide a proven strategy for improving student achievement outcomes in the state of Arizona, and more specifically, in 3 DVUSD schools. This strategy is called Project Momentum in our district. We know that only through a thorough research-based approach to teaching and learning that the impetus for meaningful gains in sustaining student achievement can be achieved. It is not enough to simply commit to a course of action. No matter how well-intentioned, it must be continually supported and nurtured to succeed. These 3 school administrators are well-grounded in research as the best way to enact change within their schools. They are a representative sampling of our district, from lower socioeconomic status to higher, title to non-title, suburban to more rural, and a range of academic achievement in ELA and math. These 5 powerful approaches or strategies are combined in the framework of Project Momentum and for the foundation of transforming schools. John Hattie, whose seminal research is on the educational practices most likely to lead to student gains, examines those findings to determine how we increase those practices across schools. It is no surprise to many of us that he has landed on the power of collaboration and collaborative learning. Hattie contends that the answer to student learning challenges lies in implementing policies that promote systems that value and develop teachers and school leaders. His decades of research have convinced him that the greatest influence on student learning is having expert, inspired, and passionate teachers and school leaders working together to maximize the effects of their teaching on students in their care. At the heart of his answer is the notion of collaborative expertise, in which all parts of the education system, teachers, parents, students, and policymakers work together to use their collective expertise to support successful learning. Based on his research, Hattie contends that policymakers and educational leaders are too focused on differences between schools when the greatest differences are within the individual school. Research shows that one of the greatest variances within a school is the effectiveness of its teachers. A key task, Hattie says, is to move the narrative away from the focus on fixing the teacher, which puts too much responsibility on an individual teacher, and instead toward a focus on opportunities created through mining the wealth of collaborative expertise. Hattie proposes that schools need to scale up teacher expertise by bringing teachers together in collaborative practice. The goal is to bring the effect of all teachers on student learning to a very high level. Project Momentum provides an opportunity for school leaders to front-load instructional planning and preparation during the summer months and repurpose the collaborative work of teacher teams to build teacher expertise aligned with the 5 influential strategies just shared. The sole focus of the effort is to increase student learning. Project Momentum provides a clear pathway for making sure that teacher practice is aligned with the required standards. The approach combines formative assessment and collaborative inquiry to promote a culture in which teachers and students are partners in learning. Educators come together regularly to assess student performance and plan differentiated support. This ensures that students who have already achieved mastery are able to extend their growth, and struggling learners have the opportunity and time to revisit needed skills and receive the help they need to be successful. Project Momentum works to affirm that a positive, productive culture is reflected in every classroom and that teachers have the time, tools, and talents needed to help students thrive. By empowering teachers to lead the change, transformational improvements can be achieved. Mr. Dan Paris, the lead grant manager, has been instrumental in bringing Project Momentum to DVUSD. We are fortunate to have his support and guidance as we embark on this journey with 3 of our schools. Doctors Miller, Schwarting, and Stulk and their campuses are ready to embark on this journey for not only our students, teachers, and school district, but for the state of Arizona as well. DVUSD will enter into an intergovernmental agreement with the State of Arizona Governor's Office of Education and a memorandum of understanding with the Team CFA Foundation as part of this project. Mr. Paris represents the philanthropic interests and support for Project Momentum in Deer Valley. I would like us to welcome Mr. Dan Paris.
Thank you, Dr. Galligan, Superintendent Finch, Board. I'm very pleased to be with you, and if my voice is a little shaky, it's because on this night, I'm proud to be here when we're giving voice to the fact that teachers are the most important work on the planet, and something that our country and your state and your division, as you've said, should invest in. So with that said, I am the project manager for this grant opportunity that we're putting forward for your consideration. Let me tell you a little bit about how this came to be. I've been in Arizona. I retired after 30 plus years in traditional public education. I'm married to a 4th grade teacher. I retired from Fairfax County, Virginia, outside of Washington, D.C., as the deputy superintendent for the division. It's a division of about 190,000 students, about 200 schools. Following retirement, there were folks in Arizona that asked me to come to the state and try out some work that we had piloted within Fairfax. Specifically what that work is it invests in teacher leadership and the power of teachers to lead change in their building. Who I specifically work for is a group of philanthropic sponsors from your community that wish to remain anonymous. They only ask that you translate this investment into better outcomes for kids. So they asked me to look around the area. The first stage of this was to find a district that I've been working with for the last 2 years. That district has been Avondale K-8 district. It's a fairly challenging environment. It has 9 schools. So what I'm about to explain to you today is something that we have been working with over the last 2 years there. So what did we do? Through the support of the philanthropic sponsors and support from the governor's office, we offered teacher leadership grants for the teachers in the 9 schools. And the belief would be that if you invest in those teachers to work within their school, to craft a plan for improving student outcomes, that investment would be returned to the community in many fold. And that investment would be returned in the form of improved student outcomes. So the plan that we're offering and putting forward for your consideration We'd like to bring that concept to Deer Valley, specifically in these 3 schools, to prove, as Dr. Finch and Dr. Galligan has said, your district offers a breadth of opportunities for schools. It's K-12. It has about every kind of school that would be available within the state within your district. So what we would offer is we'd come to the schools. We would offer predetermined, which we're still working on, a fairly broad swath of teacher leadership grants for teachers within the targeted schools. What would they do with that time? Over the last several weeks, I've been in these 3 schools several times. I've walked through a sampling of your classrooms. I've seen what you have available within the district. And I can tell you the capacity of your teacher corps and the tools that you already have on board are more than sufficient to do this work. What is lacking is the time. One of the clear facts when you look at what problem you're trying to solve, if you look at developed nations across the world, their teacher contract length is very similar across countries. What you don't see is that teachers in the United States spend more time in front of their students with direct instruction than any other developed country in the world. So what does that mean? What do those other countries do with their time? What that means is your teachers have less time for preparation, you have less time for planning, you have less time for collaboration. So this investment comes in during the summer months for those teachers that want to take on the challenge to lead this initiative in their school, that what we're proposing that they would receive 10 days of additional compensation that values them as professionals. They would take that time to work with their administration to craft an improvement plan specific to their school. What structure do we provide with it? The basic high-yield strategies that we talked about, those 5 basic things, those are the practices that we would ask the teacher leadership groups to embrace. What additional resources you would get? Within those targeted schools, we should also bring all remaining core teachers that weren't on a teacher leadership grant in for 5 or 7 additional pre-service hours to meet with their development team to begin to onboard the plan that their teachers put together. We also provide funding for substitute coverage to keep this going through the course of the year, and/or hourly compensation for teachers to do planning that would be in addition to their normal role. So there are 6 basic questions that teachers have to ask themselves if they want to achieve great things for their kids. What is it they want all kids to know and be able to do? What evidence would they accept that kids have met the required content, they've mastered the skills? What instructional practices and pedagogy produce the best results in regards to student learning? What will they do if students have not achieved the required learning? What will they do if they already know it? And how will they save and preserve all of their work that they've completed? This is not something new. The teacher in the room would say, that's the work that we do. So your choice would be, you can do this in isolation in individual classrooms because you're limited on time, or you can push the time into the schools and create structures with the guidance of the teachers that are there to share the collaborative expertise that already exists in your classrooms. If you do that, your student outcomes will improve. I guarantee it. This is a hard slide to see because it's small, but if you're a teacher and you embrace those 6 what questions, there's a lot of how do you actually do that that's underneath it. So the first one would be, how do you help your teachers build shared knowledge around the standards that they're required to teach? Perhaps at your school you already have answered that question pretty thoroughly and your teachers are already there. If you have, then we don't try to change it. We just say, let's embrace it, or if we can improve it. If you don't have a process for doing that, it's something that we can help you with structured support. So the idea would be, invest in your teacher corps. Collect the best how-tos that you have that already exist in your school and bring those to impact the students that are in Deer Valley. In phase 2, as a first offering, besides Avondale, and I'll show you a few of the results from that initial work for 2 years, was asked to bring on 2 additional districts. After looking at the district and what you have available, the culture that you have, the quality of the teachers that you have, and the passion you have, my advice to the philanthropic sponsors was make this opportunity available for Deer Valley for consideration. The other district that's going to get the same offer is Wickenburg. They're a much smaller district and a rural district, and the idea would be join them with Avondale, Deer Valley if you accept, and Wickenburg to show proof of concept across the schools in Arizona. So I'm going to talk through just some basic results. I have a lot more. This is work that I've done K-12 in Virginia with many high schools as well. Our work in the first phase was at the K-8 level, so I'll share those. For those bars that look up there, in ELA and math, so the 2 benchmark objectives that we can track, because these are what is available, and I agree that there are other outcomes that great schools deliver for their students, but 2 that are objective enough to track, to compare progress across schools, would be around AZ Merit. So in this instance, we've used AZ Merit in ELA and math. In Avondale, a district of about 6,000 students, in their baseline year, their pass percentage total for ELA was 25%. The state's pass rate was 34%. Over the 2-year period since we've begun engaging in this investment, which is exactly what I explained to you, they have grown from 25 to 38 in performance, which is more than double the growth rate of the state over the same time period. In math, their starting point was 23 as a baseline year. The last 2 years that we've engaged in this effort, they've improved to 40%, which is a 17-point gain, which is 3 times the growth rate of the state. In that same work with individual schools, because there are 8 tested schools in Avondale, there are some schools that have achieved growth rates far greater than that, up to 27 points in ELA over the 2-year period and 39 points in mathematics. Avondale's never had an A school in the history of their district. Now they have 2. How did they get there? And how did these outcomes happen? Because they invested in their teacher corps. This next slide I'm going to show you is a little bit of context that I had to learn about Arizona. You have a lot of policies that allow students choice. When we went back and looked at the results of 2017 for ELA and math in Avondale, the blue bar all the way to the left represents the performance level for students that had entered the district some point during the course of the year, not an entire year. Their pass percentage was 26% in ELA and 21% in math. If you go to the yellow bar, these are students that had remained in Avondale through the whole course of the time that we had invested in the teacher group. Their performance of those students that had stayed there over the course of the 2 years was 41% in ELA and 45% in math, both which exceeded state averages. So if your district elects to pursue this course, you would invest in your teachers. They would receive the teacher leadership grant. They would receive support and training specific to the needs that they would determine at their school. And the 2 outcomes that we would pursue, again, I know that there are other outcomes that are worthy, but the 2 that we can benchmark off of are AZ Merit, and we would expect the schools, participating schools, to have growth in student performance that exceeded that of the state. And we'd also like to see the performance of the district once we account for the differences in children, which are some regressions, but I can explain those in more detail for you later. I have every confidence from what I've seen that if you make this investment, that your students will achieve those goals without difficulty, that you will prove that if you invest in the best teachers in Deer Valley, in your teacher corps, that you're going to get exceptional results for children to build on the strength that you already have.
Okay, thank you. Do we have questions from board members?
Um,
Mrs. Ordway.
Mrs. Frank,
Oh, I'm sorry.
if you'll just one last slide, I promise.
Oh, there's more, but wait.
But wait, here it
It
is.
says thank you.
The Teacher Leadership Project Momentum Grant Initiative will have numerous sustainable benefits for Deer Valley, as has been shared. First, student outcomes will improve at a trend rate, placing their performance amongst the highest in our state. Targeted schools will sharpen their focus on instructional strategies that have been proven to have the largest impact on student learning. High-functioning collaborative structures and cultures will be built in all successful schools, included within the Deer Valley Unified School District Project Momentum Grant. Supported by transparent student data, both formative and summative, collaborative teams will continue to improve instructional practice and thus advance student outcomes well into the future. Their success will provide workable models for other schools across the state. Funding from the governor's office will be up to, but not to exceed, approximately $489,000 for these 3 schools. We will bring this item back to you for action at the April 24th board meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Galligan. All right, so Mrs. Ordway, you had a question?
Is there a difference between, because that information was from the K-8s or elementary school district, is there a large difference between utilizing that and having it work in a high school?
Okay. So let me clarify that, because that's a great question, right? So part of phase 2,
Hey, thank you.
It is to prove. So the question was, because the results that I showed were K-8, does it have the same type of impact, or is there evidence to show that it has the same type of impact at the high school level?
Sure, how would it work differently?
Right. So brief background that I can show you later in the work that I've done within Virginia. It was a K-12 initiative that has similar or better results at the high school. I only showed those results because they're Arizona results.
Thank you.
Ms. Tweedy has a question.
I had a few things. First, I would like the teachers to be surveyed to see if this is something they're interested in doing, because it would help me make a decision, because I wouldn't want to force another thing on them. If they were interested, that would be a great opportunity. So if they weren't interested, I just want to know how they feel. The other thing, I guess my other question is, I mean, I'm looking at Avondale's results, and they're doing more poorly than the state. I looked at the Auditor General's report, and we outperformed the state, and we outperformed our peers in all measured areas on the AZ Merit. So, I mean, I guess my question is, how could we be sure, first of all, that Avondale's results weren't regression towards the mean? Because they you know, when you're already low, you will regress towards the mean. You'll see improvement on a standardized test, even if you actually don't improve. So did we roll? And then secondly, I don't know why I guess I'm not seeing the similarity between our results and Avondale's.
Okay. So twofold. I think that, you know, my purpose tonight was not to come and do a mathematical treatment on regressions and accounting for the differences of children. I'm happy to come back and do it, and we can do it. I think what you have is, I'm excited to see what Deer Valley can do with the capacity that it has for its students right now. And I understand that. However, your pass rates are 40%, in the 40s. That means that six out of 10 kids don't pass the state assessments. I'm not saying that as a criticism. I'm just saying that that's the reality. And for me as a practitioner, that's something that I would want to strive toward continuous improvement to make sure that that wasn't the case.
Well, and of course, I'm sure everybody here wants to improve. And with it being a new assessment, I know over time we typically do improve once we know what's on an assessment. And I mean, we know what we have to do. I mean, we know the expectations, the standards have been changing, and the measurement tools. So I'm just curious. Like, I just first of all want to know that, you know, that they would be on board, because obviously your results would be contingent.
Yes,
if
ma'am,
people
and
have
I
bought
think
into
that
it.
You're 100% justified in doing that, and you should do that, right? I think one of the questions that would be pertinent to ask is the work that we're talking about, is this work that they're already doing? And would this investment make it easier for them to do that work?
I believe, were you done, Ms. Tweedy? Okay, I believe Mrs. Fisher had a question.
Yeah, and it's kind of Darcy took my first part, but it goes a little bit beyond just asking the teachers if they want to do it now. I want to know what the long-term plan is. I don't want, I mean, let's say we do get the teacher saying, yes, we want to do this, this will be great, and then we have a grant for year one, and then we rip it out from underneath them, and we are either struggling to find funding to continue it, or we have teachers that feel that we've let them down because we have not appropriately planned for long term. So I think to look into this, there's a couple of questions when it comes back that I would like to have. One is, what is the term of it? What's the length of it? At what point does it become unfunded? Or is it something that is a perpetual funding? Or is it something that it has a train the trainer component that we then grow, which means we have to then also figure out how we're going to retain the individuals who've been trained to train the trainer. So I mean, there's those aspects that we need to know. And then I also want to know that as far as, and this is for our administration, is what the process will be for teachers to submit to want to be part of it.
Right.
I am not a fan of the good old boy network. I want, I'm sorry, there's a lot of places that do that. I'm not saying Deer Valley does, but I want to make sure that all of our teachers who are interested have an opportunity. And so those are the key components that I would want to see before I made any decision.
Right, I think those are very valid.
Mrs. O'Brien, did you have some questions?
How many teachers are generally in the leadership program for ELA and math?
So I think to have the kind of momentum that you would need, that and a couple things to the earlier question. I do think the purpose of this would be to build capacity within your teacher corps that would be driven by a lot of the capacity that already exists there. Just how do you get it all the way across the school, and how do you save it? So my experience in the past is that you have to invest in teacher leadership grants of upwards of a third of the teachers initially. And the model that we put on the ground at the beginning was that it would be a 2-year commitment to build that capacity, but it would also be contingent on our ability to move student outcomes forward after year one.
Just for clarification, after year one, you look at the student outcomes
Of achieving the goals that we have set, yes.
And then you get year two.
Correct.
And then what happens after year two, or what's going on in Avondale now that, because you're in year 3, right, with Avondale?
Right. That's correct. So the idea behind the improvement theory is that if you invest in the teachers with the time and show that investment can be translated into student outcomes, that a lot of that capacity is already built, and the last step in the process that we do ongoing, but it's characterized as question 6, is how do you preserve and make that information available in terms of lesson plans, formative assessments, all of those things that are part of teacher work. How do you keep it and make it readily available for your entire teacher corps, so that when new teachers come in, they already have that information available for them to start.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, so similar to some of the questions Mrs. O'Brien and Mrs. Fisher had, my concern would be, what happens when the grant money runs out? Because I remember TAP schools. We threw millions of dollars at TAP schools. When the grant money ran out, so did the TAP schools. Right. Teachers were promised a lot of money, and it never delivered. So I don't want to be a part of approving another TAP school fiasco. We have other programs that are admirable programs that began with grant money, and when the grant money ran out, it came out of M&O. So I'm not saying, I agree with what you are saying with your program. You absolutely have to train teachers. But I would also be curious if we're comparing, to Avondale, what type of professional development did Avondale provide to their teachers prior to your project coming in? Because Deer Valley has invested a great deal of money and time and energy into professional development. I know that when I was a teacher, I received excellent professional development. So would we expect to see the same gains? You know, if they provided none, then you come in with your project, you would expect to see growth because they're getting high quality professional development where before they were getting none, if that makes sense. It's a little bit like comparing us to Avondale might be a little bit like comparing apples to oranges.
So I'm just showing you proof of concept with Avondale. I'm not
Right.
trying to make a comparison with you with Avondale. What I'm suggesting is, yes, you've had some excellent professional development, and I think that if you go and you allow your best teachers in these schools to help drive and select and determine the professional development that's available or needed at that school, that is going to be helpful. And I also think the investment that's being made and made available to you is to show that if the public invests in traditional public education like they should, that they will get great outcomes for kids. And we have an opportunity to prove that point. And my personal opinion is we should.
I'm not going to argue that point with you. I guess this would be to take to Cabinet, to Superintendent Finch. I would need to see a plan as to how we would continue to fund this once the grant ran out. I don't want to see another grant-funded program that we then can't afford to continue.
Well, if I can
those are my
chime in
thoughts.
here.
Sure, please do.
I think the point that he was making earlier, and Dr. Galligan as well, is the concept of time. Time is the secret for collaboration. Without time, you can't have collaboration. So, in my mind, this is in perfect place, in perfect order as we gear up for changing our structure. As we look at the concept of an early release or late start, taking the same amount of professional development time that we have currently in our system and just restructuring it so we can have more collaboration between staff. We know we can move the academic needle more. So this is kind of a setup for this. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it. Because in the end, it's going to be time is going to be our enemy. And so that's where I see this project being helpful to that end.
Are there further questions, Mrs.
I do
O'Brien?
have a clarifying question.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. And I guess it's to Dr. Finch's point. Right now, we teachers don't really have the appropriate time for class preparation and the variety of things that they're expected to do in their schedules. And so what we are trying to prove is that by giving them this additional training and outside of what the schedule is currently, that alone will, along with everything else they do, but this added piece will increase our student outcomes as it did in Avondale.
So I'm suggesting that your teachers are putting this time in already. They're just not being compensated for it.
Okay.
Right? They're doing it in the evening. So, like I said, this is obviously a ripe opportunity to bring this message, and I don't want to confuse the fact. I'm not trying to come here and make you a promise and rip this away from you as an expectation for a grant. I'm just coming to Deer Valley because I think you're poised to do this. And I think that if you invest in your teachers, it will help you go forward to your community to say, look, you put a very reasonable investment in our schools. Look what can happen for our kids. If we make a more long-term commitment for that, what could happen to the future? That's a compelling message.
Yes, it is. Thank you. And I guess what I would like to say to my fellow governing board members is that this is the question that is often asked by constituents is, how much is enough? What more do we need? When are we going to see better results from our students? And I think Deer Valley is already doing an amazing job. We still have room for improvement, as we've discussed here tonight, but it is imperative that we take it to the next level, especially at this very crucial opportunity where the people in this room and across the state are fighting for additional public education funds. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. O'Brien. Mrs. Ordway, did you have something further?
No, I think I'm going to wait for a more detailed so we can understand what the longevity is, what you have to do to complete it. Is it something that you learn how to do, it becomes intrinsic part of your thing? So I'll wait for the next part. Thank you.
Okay.
And thank you for considering our school district.
Okay. Thank you very much for
right,
your
thank you.
presentation and for the opportunity. Okay, so that moves us on to the consent agenda, and I will need a motion. G.
I move that we approve the consent agenda with the exception of items B and G, which was removed for separate consideration.
Second.
All those, is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so the motion carries 5-0. Do we need to discuss item B separately? Okay. Coming back later, okay. All right, so then we will move on to item 5G. Ms. Tweedy, you requested to move that out for separate consideration, so I think we need to start with a motion.
I move that the governing board approve item 5G, addenda contracts.
Second.
Okay, so let's open this up for discussion since you had a question. If you'd like to go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, the reason I removed this item is because in the summer when we discussed addendum contracts, I thought we had an agreement that we were going to give the Deer Valley Online addendas to our teachers. And I see a non-district employees on here to receive a $10,900 addenda to teach Deer Valley Online History, Arizona Government. And I'm just surprised that there's no Deer Valley teachers that want to teach that online course and receive a $10,900 addenda. I guess I'm just surprised.
Well, it looks like we have a few volunteers.
Well, that's. I
Why?
think we need to kind of know why.
Why?
Can't be in two places at once.
It's online. We have district office employees who teach Deer Valley Online.
Teachers on this list are online and they teach during the day.
Excuse me, if you guys, we can't hear you over here if you're having discussion. We couldn't hear what you were saying.
Okay. So
Yeah, this is Dr. Galligan question. She stepped out for a moment with the.
So Dr. Finch is saying that's a question for Dr. Galligan. It looks like she's
Well, no,
stepped
I
out.
was referring to the conversation that you guys were having. We couldn't hear you over here.
The discussion was, I believe Dr. Finch said, what, do you want to repeat what you said?
Just I think that Dr. Galligan would be the one that would be able to answer that. She would know what time it is, what happens, what she handles all of that. So she stepped out with our speaker just to help him out the door and say thanks.
What-
And she'll be
what-
back here in a second.
Would Miss Moffett know?
That's a
No.
Dr. Galligan question.
Okay. Well, that's what I was thinking. I saw her standing there.
We can get that information in an update for you.
Okay.
Well, I'm not
We-
willing to approve it. Do you want us to table these?
Then we would need an amendment.
Maybe, is Miss Moffett able, there she comes. Here she
Well,
comes.
yeah, and I guess we need to know as well if the work's already been done. Because it was my understanding we pre-approved
Approved,
and
yeah.
then it's done and then they bring it back when it's already
We
done.
pre-approved the position. We
Right.
didn't pre-approve the people in the position.
Oh, I got that.
So,
Are you ready?
Ms. Tweedy, would you like to repeat your question for Dr. Galligan?
Dr. Galligan, why are we paying a $10,900 addendum to an employee that's not in our district to teach American history?
President Frank, Ms. Tweedy, that was a clerical error. As of last fall, all of the non-district Deer Valley Online employees were told that at the end of this school year, their positions would be posted for in-district first. So that was a clerical error. That's all it was. They are not, they have no expectation for a position in the online learning program unless we do not have an in-district teacher who can fill those positions. So we apologize for that clerical error. That's all it was. This was the first time we did the preview of these positions. Those previews were approved in January, and it truly was a clerical error. That's all it was. We apologize.
Mrs. O'Brien, did you?
What was your question?
So is she teaching this course or not teaching this course?
Oh, yeah. Ms. Frank, Ms. Tweedy, as of this year, because those positions were put in place at the beginning of the year for each semester, that person is teaching those courses, as are 3 other non-district employees. But moving forward, as the process through HR has been changed last fall, that is no longer going to be the case moving into the 2018-19 school year. Again, the name on there as a pre-approved position for this next year was a clerical error. So the question you're asking, are they teaching it currently? Yes. Will they be teaching it next year? Not if there is a Deer Valley employee who applies and is placed in that position.
Ms. Frank, may I ask a clarifying question?
Go ahead. Mrs. O'Brien.
Thank you. Dr. Galligan, for these addenda, we are approving under IBN some sports, it looks like some sports stuff. Is that for current for this year, or is it for the upcoming year, the first section? Or maybe I should ask that question to Mr. Miglierino. I apologize.
Spring? So these were for the second semester online learning teachers currently teaching.
Okay, sorry, I'm going to back up all the way to the top of that spreadsheet. If you open the whole spreadsheet, Mr. Miglierino, I apologize. It says
In the IBN section.
I'm in the IBN section. I just want to make sure I understand each section and the timing of it. So the IBM folks listed, those are current coaches and we're approving that pay to go to the current coaches that have already worked.
President Frank, Ms. O'Brien, yes, those are current pay for current positions, current employees.
Okay, thank you. The non-IBN section that follows, that is, it looks like almost 100% the develop positions. These are current teachers teaching in spring of 2018
Yes.
that are getting their pay approved.
President Frank, Ms. O'Brien, that is also correct.
Okay.
Pre-approved.
So in relation to Ms. Tweedy's question, for the 2018-19 school year, any position currently held by a non-Deer Valley employee will be posted to our district employees only first. We will hire from within. If no one wants those positions, then we would hire outside of Deer Valley. So the reason there is somebody on this list currently that is whether I think you said there were a total of 3 or 4, is because they're currently teaching. We changed the process in this school year.
We change. Okay, when did this class start that we're paying for right now? These started
President
in
Frank,
January.
Ms. Tweedy, that started in January. The spring online courses started in January.
And we decided before January not to hire outside people
I believe
to
we
do this
did.
work.
I believe we decided in August.
Yeah.
That would be my question as well. If this was put in, was this just not put in place? Because I know we went in circles about making sure that we got in place that our employees were honored first. They got the first opportunity to apply for these positions. And we made that decision, I believe, back in August. I think, wasn't it August or September?
Yeah.
When was it? Because shouldn't we have been able to recruit by January for an internal candidate? I think that's what Ms. Tweedy's question is.
Yeah, President Frank, Ms. Fisher, I don't remember exactly the day, but I think it was into the school year before we actually came up with the plan, and I'm only basing that on my recollection of us meeting with the building principals to share the new process with them. So it did take us a little while to get that organized, and it was into the school year. I don't want to quote a date because I don't recall that specifically. I think I don't know much about this other than what I can see from the pre-approval. The board pre-approved this on January 9th, and I think what we determined was in the first semester, somewhere I think fairly deep in the first semester, is all of the changes that are a part of what we call our Administrative Management Guideline, or AMG, were memorialized late in the first semester of this school year that include the preference for district employees for these positions. So I think this decision was probably made at the same time that we were finalizing all of those decisions, and subsequently was pre-approved the very first meeting we did this new process of pre-approval, and now we're bringing it back to actually provide the information what the actual payment will be.
I'm kind of upset about this because in the name of saving time, what I agreed to was to pre-approve positions without the names, because obviously we're not interviewing and choosing the best applicant. And I did that based on trust that these were going to be filled like with our agreement, obviously Deer Valley employees. I'm not thinking we should be paying addendas to people who aren't employees when our own employees are packing our board meeting because they can't live on their salary. And then when I pull it off the agenda, and our board meetings go on till all hours of the night, I get accused of micromanaging. And I'm trying to be reasonable, but then I don't want to follow this process. I want to pre-approve the names too then, if this is how if this happens again, I'm going to go back to that. And if our meetings take till 11, they take till 11. I don't know what else to say about it. Because we're going to obviously have to approve this if she's already worked, because it would be illegal, but I'm upset.
I would ask that we get information about when we did approve this, because I do believe it was before the holidays. So I think, even it was into the school year, but it was before the holidays. So we were not staffing this semester until after we had approved it. And my question would be is, why didn't it go into place? Because it is what we agreed to, that we would pre-approve positions. They would follow the new HR process of being open to our staff first, our staff getting priority selection. And then if no one in Deer Valley truly wanted it, then we would look outside. So even if we pre-approved the position on January 9th, the hiring process was already in place. And so, like Ms. Tweedy, I do feel that, I do not want to believe there was any malice aforethought. However, we need to know for fact that our process is sound and that we are truly following the process that we all fought to get to honor our employees, internal. So I really, in a Thursday update or something, Ms. Tweedy is right. We have no choice. If she's done the work, we have to pay. We have to pay because she's done the work. But I want some kind of update in the Thursday update or something to ensure that this process is truly in works. It's done, and we're going to honor it, because if not, I'm with Ms. Tweedy. We can stay here till 11 o'clock at night. I hate those long meetings, but we have a responsibility to protect all employees. And we just need to know that it's being followed.
Okay, so Dr. Finch, are there other comments from?
I do have another question.
Okay, go ahead, Mrs. O'Brien.
Can someone explain to me how, for the online teachers in the past, so prior to this year and this year's change in process, did we normally post between the first semester and the second semester all of those positions?
President Frank, Ms. O'Brien, in general, our online teachers who receive an addenda for the 2 semesters in the school year would receive them for a job expectation for both semesters. That doesn't necessarily mean that they all would continue or that they all started first semester instead of starting second semester, but the general historical context of this is that you would teach first semester of the course and second semester of the course.
So
that's just been historical.
Okay, so the process prior to this year has been that we hire teachers over the summer, the beginning, or in August, to work both semesters in or even online classes as an addenda. I appreciate that clarification. I do look forward to seeing the update, but I think that it is, in my opinion, a disservice when we have a new process and sometimes there's going to be bumps in the road. So I think that it behooves us as a governing board to ask questions, but also understand that occasionally mistakes are made, and that we should honor the process, but we did make a substantial change to this process. That's all I would share.
Okay, thank you. Anything further, Mrs. Fisher, Ms. Tweedy? So my recollection is that we had a great deal of discussion back in September or October about wanting these addenda to go first to current Deer Valley employees and not look outside. So it is, again, a big change to the process, so bumps in the road, but it is discouraging to see that addenda go to someone outside of the district. So what I would ask of Dr. Finch and your cabinet to review the process, to look and see if there's areas for improvement. I mean, obviously this happened. We can't not pay the person who's done the work, in my opinion. But I would request that we have some information on how we can improve this process going forward so this doesn't happen again. And I don't think anyone's trying to point fingers or be blameful. I think it's Ms. Tweedy noticed this and had some questions, and so we just want to make sure the process that we outlined and requested is being followed. Okay, thank you. Is there anything further on this item? Okay, then I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so the motion carries 5-0. All right, that brings us to number 6, action item A, second reading and adoption of revised policy JFB, open enrollment. Can I get a motion?
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to conduct a second reading and adopt the revised policy JFB, open enrollment.
Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion, questions? There were no changes?
Yes.
So it's the same. Go ahead, Mrs.
Okay.
Moffett.
Good evening again, Ms. Frank, governing board members, and Dr. Finch. I would like to bring to your attention, if you look on the policy, under enrollment priorities, we did catch a typo. If you look at the green states that we updated the policy to show no differentiation between resident and non-resident pupils, and that would be in compliance with our current practice. That update was made in the other bullets, but you'll see in bullet 2, it says enrollment preference shall be given to resident transfer pupils. We have included or non-resident transfer pupils in that bullet so that it is in compliance with the remainder of the policy. We also added the word to in the third bullet because it was missing the word to. So enrollment preference shall be given to a non-resident pupil. It was missing, again, it was missing to.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Moffett. Are there questions from the board? Okay, hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Action item 6B, the resolution to rescind and replace board meeting schedule 2017-2018. Can I get a motion? We're on 6B.
I move that the governing board approve to alter the regular governing board meeting date from May 8th, 2018 to May 15th, 2018.
Second.
Okay. Dr. Finch, would you like to speak to that item?
Sure, May. I'll pass Mr. Migliorino. You want to talk about that when our budget, or when the, as we know, we're struggling with budget and numbers are important to us. So the state will be putting out some reports a little later that might help us make better decisions.
Yes, President Frank, members of the board, Dr. Finch, we actually are the first year that we are not held harmless with current year funding, and so the statute reads that we have to revise our current year budget by May 15th of each year, and there have been at least 1 month in this year in which the State Department of Education had to rerun the reports. So it's a high-stakes affair for us. I mean, whatever those reports say or what we're going to revise our budget on, but they run those reports during that first week of the month, as late as the 7th or 8th. And so if we kept the board meeting on May 8th, there's a chance that we may not have the reports necessary to complete the budget revision, and it is the last time that we can revise the budget for this year, 2017-18. Based on that, it was determined that there wasn't a conflict on the 15th, or if there was a conflict, it was worked out, I guess. Room assignments are always a challenge, but so we're recommending changing the meeting from the 8th to the 15th, so that way we would have the most up-to-date information to revise our budget, to comply with that statutory requirement.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Migliorino. Are there questions from the board? Okay, hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 5-0. That brings us to, we've already done C and D, so action item 6E, approve addenda pre-approvals. If I can have a motion for item 6E.
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to pre-approve the addenda as presented.
Are there questions on this item?
I'm just going to clarification. There's no names, but I'm assuming I'm approving all Deer Valley employees. So,
President Frank, Ms. Tweedy, it would go first in-house, then it would go in-district. If any of those positions were not filled after those two HR processes, then any of those positions could go outside, but I am confident that we will have teachers who will fill those within our district.
are they just going to be posted online and they have to look, or are they going to get an email that there's postings? How's
It would be the normal process that we have used for would be for the teachers who are already teaching. They get first dibs at it, and then after that it would go out to our district just as any normal HR position would.
Okay.
So, just one point of clarification, in-house, so teachers that are already teaching who are our teachers. If any of them were, it does not follow that same process. Just double checking.
President Frank, Ms. Fisher, our goal is to have Deer Valley employed teachers in these positions.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Galligan. Anything further? Mrs. O'Brien?
Thank you. Dr. Finch, if for some reason those positions are not all filled by Deer Valley employees, I would request that that information be shared in a Thursday update to all board members, that they are being advertised out for outside people.
Sure, not a problem.
Okay, thank you.
That would perhaps reduce questions at the board meeting. Thank you,
I
Mrs.
think
O'Brien.
I think the question. I think it's great that Darcy had the question. Ms. Tweedy had the question. I think, but part of it is expectation and surprises, and
Right.
sometimes we're not so good with surprises.
Okay.
And I think if nobody does apply, I would appreciate before it goes to the outside that an email go out to our staff that says this is getting ready to go to the outside if we don't fill it in-house by this date.
Okay, so hearing no further questions, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. Which brings us to item 6F, approve amendment number 6 to the intergovernmental agreement between Deer Valley Unified School District and the Maricopa County Library District. So can I get a motion, Ms. Tweedy?
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve the guarantee maximum price.
Oh, no, we're on F.
F.
The,
I move that the governing
Go ahead.
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve the 6th Amendment to the intergovernmental agreement between Deer Valley Unified School District and the Maricopa County Library District before the operation of a regional and high school library.
Second.
Okay, Dr. Finch, would you like to speak to this item?
Sure, I've been the one that's kind of been in top of this one. In conversations with the library there, and showing my concerns, obviously, after the several incidents we've had across the nation, security is important, and I see that point as a weak point in our system, especially obviously at Boulder Creek. So I met with the different officials several times and recommended that we add an armed security guard at that point, and they have agreed to pick up the cost for that, and will be installing as soon as we pass the IGA.
Okay. Are there questions on this item? Okay. Hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 5-0. Item 6G, guaranteed maximum price for Arrowhead Elementary. Can I get a motion?
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve the guaranteed maximum price in the amount of $6,006. Oh, no.
Ooh, that would be awesome.
That would have been a good deal.
That's a great price. We'll take it.
We'll take it 3 times.
$6,675,000 for the Arrowhead Elementary School Modernization Project to core construction using core construction manager at risk methodology.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Miglerino, do you have some information to share?
President Frank, members of the board, Dr. Finch, did want to share, as we previously commented, we are seeing, this is more editorial, I should disclose before I move on. We are seeing quite a bit of escalation when it comes to our construction projects. We had quite a bit of challenge to get to the GMP for the Arrowhead project, but we are recommending this because it is the best opportunity for us to get the work done, and it is part of the bond initiative that was approved by the voters that will be funding this. So we're excited about the project and maybe disappointed about the process to get there. But we have done work with core construction before, and so now that we're over this hurdle, pending the outcome of your vote, then we will start in earnest so that we can make these improvements at the school. And the school is excited about looking forward to these improvements as well.
So you're saying we shouldn't wait in hopes that the price will go down?
President Frank, yes, I think waiting will only add more cost
Kind
at
of
this
like
point.
getting fuel at the gas station where, yeah, gas up today, tomorrow it's anybody's guess. Okay. Questions for Mr. Miglerino on this item?
Well,
Ms. Tweedy.
Well, and I guess my only question is, I'm still not certain what we're going to do long term to fit all the students in schools going forward. Would that have any impact on Arrowhead or what we would want to do to that school? Because I don't want to see us put $6 million in and then go, whoops, we needed a bigger gym because we're going to be K-8 or just throwing.
Yep. President Frank, Ms. Tweedy, I had a hard time hearing you a little bit, but I think your question was what are the future plans as we had the discussion from the work session, the recent work session about boundaries and other changes. When we look at the demographer's report and projections for students, Arrowhead Elementary School is projected to increase. And as we look at the next two projects, which would be, and in no particular order, Bel Air Elementary and Hillcrest Middle School, that would be an opportunity for us to have a discussion about maybe does any reconfiguration or anything, would it be warranted for those two projects before we determine the scope of work. But for the Arrowhead Elementary, it looks like there's and it's very modest gains in terms of student enrollment based on the demographer's report, but some increased amount there, and certainly not one of the schools that was highlighted in blue. If you remember, blue was the less than 50% of student capacity as determined by the School Facilities Board.
Mrs. Fisher, any questions? Okay. Yeah, that would be my question also, is if we're spending $6 million to renovate a school, I'd want to make sure that we have some plans to fill the school, because otherwise I could put extra bedrooms on my house, but my two sons have moved out, and shockingly, they don't want to move back in with mom, so it'd kind of be a waste of money for me. Not that I'm sad about that. Okay. What's that? No, I've replaced the kids with cats, so. But perhaps I shouldn't have said that on live stream. All right, so if there's no questions, and it's getting late, so are there any questions, comments? And I'll go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none. Motion carries 5-0. Moves us on to 6H. Can I get a motion?
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve the 2018-19 Employee Benefit Committee recommendation.
No, we're on the guaranteed maximum price for the Barry Goldwater. You just want to get done with this meeting.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve the guaranteed maximum price through a job order contract in the amount of $1,386,960 for the Barry Goldwater School CTE Culinary Improvement Project to the McCarthy Building Companies.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Miglerino.
President Frank, members of the board, Dr. Finch, this particular project we're very excited about. It is going to allow us to create a capstone program in our culinary arts endeavor at Barry Goldwater High School. The chef there and the staff that are working on this have all sorts of accolades, as we were able to showcase at a previous board meeting. We actually have, and I don't want to steal anybody's thunder, but we have another award that's on deck that we're excited to share with you. This is going to create a very excitable project for not only the students, but for our community to be able to join and participate by opening up a high-end restaurant on the campus, for people to actually see the great work that our students are doing. We're excited about this opportunity. It is 100% funded from our joint technical education district cooperative with WestMec. So WestMec funds are paying for these improvements. And I'd be happy to answer any other questions the board might have.
Okay. Other questions from the board? No?
I just wanted to say that when I was in San Antonio talking with school governing board members from across the country about this opportunity, there was a lot of jealous school board members that this is an incredible opportunity for our high school students. So kudos to the CTE folks and moving forward with this.
And that's what I was going to say. I just, those students and Chef Ryan just have, and what's the other chef's name? I know there's another one. I can never remember her name. But they've just moved the program forward, and the real life experience with planning the menus, figuring out how much room they need, how they're going to decorate, set the table, present the food. I would be more than happy to be their guinea pig and taste it. So, awesomeness.
I actually do have a question. So if we approve this tonight, will they cater board meetings that run past 10 o'clock?
President Frank, that is not part of the plan, but I appreciate the
I think
the
if
question.
we pay for it, they'll cater anything.
Okay, we might be taking up a collection. All right, any further questions, comments? I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 5-0. All right. Even without catering, they're applauding. All right, so item 6I, employee benefits. Ms. Tweedy, may I have a motion?
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve the 2018-19 employee benefit committee recommendation.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Miglerino.
President Frank, members of the board, Dr. Finch. So we have shared pieces of this, but for the benefit of those in the audience that may not have seen this in other settings that we've shared it with the board, I'll go through this. So we do have a benefit committee that actually works to present or to determine what the benefit offering should be. So these are the benefits that we'll be able to offer our employees for next school year. Here are the benefit committee members. So we have benefit committee members from each of the employee groups, as well as Ms. Vega and myself sit on the committee. Sad day last Friday was Ms. Vega's last day of employment with us after 42 years serving students throughout the state of Arizona, 18 years with the Deer Valley School District. So, in maybe in honor of her service, she's listed top of the list there. I know some of the committee members might even be in the audience. I wanted to recognize them for their commitment to this. It's not an easy task because we know some of the impacts that are made. Many of our employees elect to stay and work here for some of the benefit offerings, and it can have very significant consequences to people. There was a commitment of time that the benefit committee looked at several pieces of information, lots of data that we provide to be able to help make the recommendation. You can see the meeting dates there. Each of those meetings lasted no less than an hour and a half to maybe 2 hours. So without further ado, just in the interest of time, trying to move through this quickly, here is the benefit recommendation for next year. We started out with an just over 8% increase, and that was due to our loss ratio at the time was right at 101%. So every dollar in, we were spending $1.01. So part of that was that 1 penny, the extra 1 penny. The rest of it was all medical inflation. So most of that was on the health insurance provider side, but it also included some prescription inflation as well. That 8% was nearly $1.9 million. That's the first, what we call the bogey that we looked at initially. As time went on, our loss ratio got a little bit better, so that number is ever changing. I remember you saw where the meeting dates were throughout that first and into the second semester of the school year. But the committee then made a recommendation, and essentially the long and short of this, if I had to summarize this, we've made some minor changes to the plans in order to make sure that there would not be a cost increase for medical coverage for our employees, nor our employees that are that are providing for their dependents. I think this may be a first in our district. It was a very conscious decision that the committee made to do that. In order to make that work, knowing that we are facing increased costs, and remember we are self-insured, so when I was talking about that dollar in and dollar out, that's our dollar in and our dollar and a penny going out. So you have to make sure that you have the means to be able to continue to provide for that over a sustainable future. But minor changes to the plan and using the reserves that we have built up, being self-insured, to be able to make sure there was truly no cost on the medical side for not only our employees, but those employees that elect for dependent coverage. The rest of the changes, and I'll go through those quickly, just adding the generic preferred prescription option into our prescriptions. This will try and drive our employees to elect generic scripts where possible. If they need to a specific script for a condition, then we certainly encourage them to work with their medical provider to make sure the script is written appropriately for something that would be other than the generic. We're eliminating certain out-of-network providers. We found that some providers use, I'll just say, very opportunistic tactics to try and draw people in to be able to bill for charges that are unnecessary. We have identified those out-of-network providers that that fall in that category, and we're reducing them. Not only are our employees, unfortunately, not getting good care at these facilities, they're also being charged additional amounts of money. So we're trying to make sure that we protect our employees. So this doesn't really limit them. We're not saying that you can't go to to get care for whatever condition you have. We're just saying you can't go to these locations to get that care because it's not the most cost-effective and efficient way to make sure that they get the care that they need. We're eliminating both the traditional and Navigate Premier high-deductible health plans. And there's a reason for this. So we have 4 high-deductible plans now, 2 Premier plans and 2 basic plans. And the actual Premier plan is not as good of an option, especially for those employees that elect dependent coverage, and we have several that do. It entices them because it has a lower deductible, but in fact, it actually could cost and will likely cost any employee that has dependents on their plan. It will cost them more to be on the Premier plan than it would be to be on the basic plan. And there's reason for that is the IRS has a requirement for what's called an embedded deductible, and that requirement is not met in the Premier plan. It is met in the basic plan, so it's a higher deductible again. So it looks less attractive, but the embedded deductible allows it to be aggregated from all the dependents that you would be covering, as opposed to each dependent or each covered member having to meet the deductible. So that's a much higher standard, and typically what happens is you have one member of the family that has a procedure or a need, and the rest of the family doesn't necessarily have as much care, and so you never hit the deductible with everybody. So we're trying to encourage the appropriate plans and make sure that we don't offer plans that would necessarily be something that wouldn't be a benefit to our employees. The threshold for that embedded deductible with the IRS is $2,700. So since we're essentially forcing our employees into the basic plan that were on the Premier plan before, the basic deductible was $3,000. We want to reduce it to $2,700 and still offer the 2-for-1 match on the HSA contributions for their employee account. Meaning for every dollar they put in, we match it with $2, so they would have 3, and we do that up to a cap of $1,200. So their $600 would yield $1,200 from us. They would get $1,800 of that $2,700 deductible. We would use the reserves. As I mentioned before, the premium cost increase is just over $1.3 million with the changes that I just talked about. The rest of the deductibles, copays, out-of-pocket maximums, and that remain the same. And the only other change that we have to present is that the Delta Dental has a small increase in the monthly premium for employees with dependent coverage. It's $2.60. With all that said, the rates do increase by 5.58%, so we do identify what the rates are, but employees will not bear that cost. It will be paid for by the district or the reserves that we have. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Oh, I should identify that pending the outcome of your vote, we are scheduled to do open enrollment starting April 30th so that we can make all of this information available to our employees so they can elect their coverage for next year.
Thank you, Mr. Miglerino. Mrs. Fisher, you look like you have a question.
No, this time I'm happy. They're getting no additional charge, and we got better plans, and then we still have their HSAs. I'm good.
Okay. Any other questions, comments from any other board members? All right. Well, hearing none, I will call for the Dr. Finch. Did you
Can
have
I chime in here?
Yes.
As a superintendent, I think I mentioned this last time. I don't disagree with what we're doing here. I think it's the right thing to do at the right time, but living out of our bank account is usually not a good strategy. So into the future, as these costs continue to rise, that'll be the decision that we'll have to make as a group. At what point can the district continue to bear additional costs? So something to think about into the future, but this is a good move at this time.
Okay. Thank you, Dr.
Recommended.
Finch. Didn't mean to not include you. I'm always looking this way. All right. So, Mrs. O'Brien?
I see at the bottom of the slide, it talks about making sure the employees are informed of potential future increases. Do we have a communication plan for that yet? And when will that occur?
I can speak to that, President Frank, Ms. O'Brien. We have not finalized the communication plan, but it will be part of, and the committee was instrumental in making sure that this was included, and it was actually from input that we were able to share as collectively as a group, as well as what we heard from the governing board from previous conversations regarding the potential to use the reserves to balance, to make this recommendation. And it would be included in the information that will go out with the open enrollment notice. And we're kicking off the open enrollment with a health and wellness fair. So if it's not on your calendar, April 30th, right here in this room, from noon to 5 o'clock. So we don't have the plan finalized. We were too busy celebrating Miss Vega's retirement, apparently, for us to get all that worked out. It's in the works. It's just not finalized at this point.
Thank you so much.
Okay. So, hearing no other questions or concerns, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. That brings us to 6J, approve employee travel. So I will need a motion.
I move that the governing board approves all employee out-of-state travel per governing board policy GCC.
Second.
Okay. So we've done it two different ways. Sometimes we've voted on trips individually. I think there was one or two occasions when we voted on just all of the trips at once. I do have a question about the funding code for one of the trips, so I would appreciate it if we would vote on each trip individually.
Item A.
So why don't you just the name of the trip?
NAEYC Professional Learning Institute Conference, Austin, Texas. Cost $2,731.
Does anyone have any questions about that item? Okay, all those in
A
favor?
point of clarification. So
Okay,
are we
go
doing a separate motion and second for each one? Is that what we're doing?
Perhaps.
We're voting on
yeah,
each of them
perhaps we do.
separately to be.
Second.
All those in favor?
Sorry, are we? So we're
Oh.
we're going to do
We're
the first
trip A.
Trip A, and this.
So we have a motion on the floor for trip A. We have a second. Is there discussion?
Call for the vote.
Okay, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, 5-0.
I move that the governing board approve Trip B to National Marketing Education Association, District of Columbia, $2,750.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 5-0. Trip C.
I move that the governing board approve Trip C.
Is there any discussion, or do we have a second?
I'll second
Sorry.
it.
Thank you, Ms. Ordway. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so motion carries 5-0. Brings us to Trip D.
I move that the governing board accept Trip C for an employee to travel to the 2018 RTM K-12 Innovation Forum in San Antonio, Texas.
Second.
Okay, did you say trip C or trip D?
D.
Trip, okay. So it's trip D.
Yeah, we just approved C.
Okay, but you said trip, it's getting late. Who's on first?
D.
Okay, trip D. All right, so we have a motion on the floor. We have a second. I did have a question about the funding for this trip. I looked at the funding code, and it said it was coming out of the Prop 301 menu money. Is that correct?
President Frank, that is correct. This is part of the district initiative share of the Classroom Side Fund.
Okay, so the menu money, it not 100% of it is not spent on teacher salaries. Is that correct? Okay, guys, I know it's late and you've been here a long time, but I can't hear Mr. Miglerino's answer.
Yes, it is.
Okay, and my understanding is that 100% of that menu money could go to teacher salaries, but currently in Deer Valley it does not.
That is correct.
That's correct. Okay. So I can only speak for myself. This is my opinion. I don't feel comfortable approving conferences, travel that's paid for out of the Prop 301 menu money. I feel that, when we ask the state legislature for more money, and they come back to us and say, well, what are you doing with the money that we already gave you? I think it's incumbent upon us as the governing board to put as many resources as we possibly can into our employees' salaries. And so I would very respectfully have to vote no, but if there were another source of funding for this trip or for this conference, then I would happily vote to approve it. So that's my opinion. I would welcome discussion from my fellow board members.
I concur.
Question.
Go ahead.
Jim, I'm not, I know historically I always kind of look at what, there's a section of the 301 funds that we use for professional development. And my understanding is it's for teacher professional development. Am I not understanding correctly?
President Frank, Ms. Fisher, so I think we include our curriculum specialists as well as any teachers for professional development.
Okay. Because I believe that 301 is for the teachers, period. Whether it's for their pay. Wait. I hadn't finished. Whether it's for their pay or their professional development. Had this been a teacher that was going for a professional development and they were using that 301 funds, I would be okay with it. My concern is this is not a teacher. This is an administrator. And if I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of teachers in a lot of districts. Some say, oh, well, they give it all to us. Some do. The bottom line is if they say, I'm as developed as I think I can be, and we're going to give it all to them, that's one thing. But I definitely do not think we're supposed to be using it for administrators. And I'm just, so is there a different funding for this? Okay.
Ms. Fisher, yes. In fact, Dr. Galligan had mentioned to me that the cost of this is less than $400 for the trip. She would be willing to take this out of her M&O budget if the board would agree to approve it, and then would not come out of the Classroom Side Fund.
If we can make a motion to approve it with that change, I would be okay with it.
So
We have to amend. If we vote no, then it is dead.
Yeah,
right. So we would need an amendment to the motion for the funding source, and I do realize that the cost of this trip is small comparatively. To me, it's not the dollar amount; it's really more the principle of the thing. So Can I get, does someone want to amend this motion?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
I said it's not the dollar amount for me, it's the principal, so.
Right, no, after that, what did you say? I heard that part.
Oh, okay, I said, does someone want to offer an amendment to the motion that's on the table?
I'd like to ask a question if
Okay,
that would be
go
okay
ahead.
first. So,
Sure.
When we've talked about in the past for the Prop 301 money, the teacher development, and so this person is a curriculum instructional person, is that correct?
President Frank, Ms. O'Brien, this person oversees our technology integration across all of our campuses, our high schools, middle schools, elementaries. So part of this person's duties is to help us continue to grow in our integration and implementation of technology to have future-ready schools, classrooms, and students.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Galligan. I move to amend the motion to have these funds come out of the M&O budget from, do I need to specifically say administrative, is it administrative and leadership?
Curriculum, instruction, and assessment.
Curriculum, instruction, and assessment budget, M&O budget.
Second.
Okay, is there discussion on the amendment?
I just would like to add that we're not just changing the funds, we're also approving. It's just a slip of the word, but I don't want somebody to come back and say, well, you just approved the funds, you didn't approve the trip.
Sorry,
So if we could
well,
add,
the amendment though is just to change the original motion, which says to approve it. I'm
Right,
asking
well-
is to change, we're gonna have to have two votes.
yeah, we're approving it with the original funding, I would just prefer it be clear.
Okay, so how would you suggest that we word this, Mrs. Fisher? So that we're
We
clear.
have an amendment, right now we have an amendment and a second, so we either have to accept that amendment or not.
And so the amendment is to change the funding code on the trip, is that correct?
Right, the amendment is to change the funding source on the original motion, which is to approve the trip on a certain code. So this just changes that code.
So,
That's all my
so a
amendment
yes
would do.
vote would approve the trip with a different funding code? No, just change the
It would
code.
just change the code.
Okay,
And then we vote on the original, the amended.
okay,
Amendment to
so
approve it.
I
That's-
will call for the vote on the amendment that has been offered by Mrs. O'Brien.
That changes the funding source.
That changes the funding source. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0, so that brings us back to
The trip.
the
I
trip.
move that we approve trip D.
It's already been, you're good. It's already been
Okay, so
moved.
that's
We
been-
just have to vote yes or no.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I will abstain, I don't believe we did this correctly.
Okay. I move that we approve trip E
I think we
NA
just, okay. So we voted-
NAF Next Conference, Washington, D.C.
Any
Oh,
okay, go
are
ahead,
you done?
second.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote.
Aye.
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 Okay, motion carries 5-0. All right, that brings us to action item 6K, proclamation for Volunteer Week. Ms. Tweedy?
I move that the governing board approve a proclamation declaring April 15th through the 22nd, 2018 to be Volunteer Week in the Deer Valley Unified School District.
Why, I happily second that fabulous motion.
Okay, so I have been asked to read this proclamation.
With
Wh-
feeling.
Of
Theatrical
course, I have a drama degree.
Yes, we know that, but let's
Whereas the entire community can affect positive change with any volunteer action, no matter how big or small. And whereas volunteers can connect with local community service opportunities through our schools. And whereas hundreds of volunteers working in our schools utilize their time and talent daily to make a real difference in the lives of children and adults. And whereas during this week, all over the nation, service projects will be performed and volunteers recognized for their commitment to service. And whereas during this month, Deer Valley Schools will be recognizing volunteers for their commitment to students and staff. And whereas the giving of oneself in service to another empowers the giver and the recipient, and whereas experience teaches us that government by itself cannot solve all of our nation's social problems, and whereas our country's volunteer force of over 64 million people is a great treasure, and whereas volunteers are vital to our students' future as caring and productive citizens, now, therefore, I, Jenny Frank, serving as president of the Deer Valley Unified School District Governing Board, do hereby proclaim April 15th through 22nd, 2018, as the annual observance of Volunteer Week, signed on this 10th day of April 2018.
Woo!
And they said that theater gree would never be useful. So is there any discussion on this item? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
It again.
No, I'm just going to sign it. All right, so we are now through all of our action items, but wait, there's more. We have 2 preview items and a discussion. So 7A, first reading of revised policies IKA and IKAB.
President Frank, members of the board, Dr. Finch, and guests. Tonight, we will give you a preview and first reading of 2 board policies. Revisions of policy IKA reflect the board's decision to utilize the state assessment for grade enhancement with end-of-course high school assessments. Revisions to policy IKAB provide clarification for school report cards, school progress reports, and student grade report cards. This was not as clear in the current version of policy IKAB. If the board approves changes to policy IKA and policy IKAB at the April 24th board meeting, regulations for each policy will be submitted. These 2 regulations reflect and provide direction for the state assessment grade enhancement for end-of-course assessments. Thank you. Quick.
Okay. Are there any questions? I'm sorry, I was expecting a longer presentation, Dr. Galligan. I looked down and I looked up and you were done, and
Short and sweet.
that's. And your mic. No one can hear you.
I guess my only thing, because this could just go on really long, but I would like to find another time to discuss this a little more when it's not the end of the meeting, because there's some wording in here that I'm not totally comfortable with. I know we agreed to grade enhancement, but it somewhat seems like we're approving just a completely arbitrary grading system. I want to discuss it, but I don't want to discuss it now and this to go another hour.
Why?
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so
with that being
Go
said,
ahead.
is this just a preview? Can we just bring it back as a first read so that we can then at that point discuss it? And really just, dig into any questions and then do a second read?
And then
This
we'll
isn't-
send you questions in the meantime.
Mrs. Frank, Ms. Tweedy, Ms. Fisher, and Ms. Ordway, certainly.
okay.
Thank you.
All right, it sounds like we have a plan. Thank you, Dr. Galligan. Our
Plan?
Our next preview item, 7B, I was wondering if we might want to table this preview item. I did receive an email from Dr. Joe Cutter of the Confucius Institute that I would like to share with fellow board members. I received it late yesterday evening. Am I not allowed to do that?
What, table something?
No, to share that.
That's a daisy chain. If
Well-
Dr. Finch provides something in a Thursday update and we all just receive it, that's one thing.
Okay, so I
But
will
board member to board
share
member is
that.
daisy chain.
I
wouldn't
believe
do it.
you were copied on that email, so I think that might be information the board should have. So if it shouldn't come from me, then
I would say just have Dr. Finch put it in the
I would
Thursday
request
update or
Dr.
something.
Finch put that information in a Thursday update. Does that seem reasonable to you, Dr. Finch, Dr. Galligan, that we table this pending further information that has become available?
That would be fine.
Okay, is that acceptable to the rest of the board?
Are we going to run into a timing issue given how close we are getting to the end of the year? Are we going to run into a timing issue given how close we're getting to the end of the year?
President Frank, Ms. O'Brien, the further back we put this means that there could be 3 possible positions that we would not have filled in August when schools return to those classrooms. It takes anywhere from 3.5 to 5.5 months once we've identified a possible applicant for those positions to get through the whole visa process and the vetting process and all of that. So the further we push it back, it just pushes the time that we could possibly have teachers start for us.
So since this is a preview item and not an action item, I'm wondering if our next work session, it would only put us a week, it would give us another week if we could add that to the work session. Would that be an acceptable compromise or not? Just throwing that out there.
I guess I would ask that if we're going to table this, it needs to be tabled no longer than the very next meeting.
The next
Right.
board meeting or next work session?
Oh, the work session. Oh, I forgot we're having a work session. Then the
You
work
just supposed
session
to
that's coming up on Tuesday.
Correct.
Would just
That one's
be
around
delaying it a
community ed.
week.
That one's around community ed, so this would be adding to that.
That's fine with
We would
me.
have 2 topics that evening.
Yeah, and I'd like to know what happened to option
Yeah, we
3.
got that.
There's only 2.
Okay.
And I just have one question. This can be clarified in an update. If we are discussing 3 specific employees, are we following how you discuss 3 specific employees that may or may not be renewed? So I don't want to discuss it now. I just want that information in an update.
Could you say that again?
When we talk about specific employees, and we know that who these specific employees are, they are normally given the right to attend or not attend or have it in an executive session or in public. And we have not followed that with these 3 employees since the inception of this. So I just want to make sure that we're following the rule.
Yeah, I think it's actually related to the position, not necessarily the employee.
Well, no,
It's not.
it's 3 specific
It does
employees.
impact employees, though. You are correct.
But this is 3 specific employees, and I really don't want to get into the whole thing now. So just make sure that we're following
Legal
their
compliance.
employee
Right.
rights.
And thank you, Mrs. Ordway, for bringing that up. Okay, so we're all good on this item?
I move that, a motion was made, correct? Or no?
Table.
No.
Preview.
It's
I
a preview
apologize.
item.
Thank
That's
you.
okay.
I apologize.
So it's a preview item, so I think we have a plan for that one as well. That brings us up to tonight's discussion item, which is the Red for Ed resolution. So obviously there is a great deal of interest and support amongst employees for the Red for Ed movement, and this was added to the agenda. Several other school districts or school boards have adopted a position of support. And so we had 2 documents that were uploaded onto board docs. One is a joint Red for Ed joint letter that I believe came from Arizona Educators United, was provided by Ms. Leyva, if I'm correct on that. And then the second potential was a governing board resolution that was drafted or was provided by Dr. Finch. So we had 2 options to look at and also to discuss as a governing board. Is this something we want to adopt a resolution for? Is there language we might want to change in the 2 options that were provided? So at this time, Dr. Finch, if you'd like to provide some background, and then we'll open it up for discussion.
Well, I think I forwarded you the attorney's opinions, two conflicting attorney's opinions, I might add, about how much the board can get involved. And so I shared that with you, but these 2 examples are, they're generic, they're proclamation concept, so it's more of a verbal support from the district. So it's not obligating us for any dollars or any future votes, et cetera, et cetera. It's more of a proclamation of the concept and the general idea about the Red for Ed movement. So we do have conflicting opinions from our attorneys on it, but something to weigh.
Okay, so opening up this up for discussion. Ms. Ordway, I saw your hand first. Mrs. Fisher, I think you.
Weren't we gonna let public
Do we want to do public
Do y'all
comment?
want to talk first? Do you want to hear what we say and then
they're-
talk?
You're all on this. Okay.
Are they all about? No, they're not.
Oh, none of them were about this?
Well, there's a mix.
Stop pointing at each other. Which one?
So we had decided to do public comments. Sorry, last.
Oh, I think you're not going to let them speak at it.
Well, they can speak to the agenda item.
If
that's
they're
where the
here to
comment's
talk an
going.
agenda item, they can speak about it.
Okay.
But do you want to
So-
speak about it before we discuss it or after is the question.
Before. So, okay.
Oh, so Darcy starts spinning your speech.
Start reading.
Okay, why don't I call the speakers up first and then admonishment. All right, so I will call the first 4 speakers that I have slips for. Please make your way to the podium, and then Ms. Tweedy will read the admonishment. Remember, you have 1.5 minutes. We had to reduce the 3-minute time to accommodate all the speakers in our overall time limit. Maria Leyva, Terry Overfield, Janine Swan, and Audi Ode. Hope I pronounced your name correctly. So,
Kelly was pointing. I think she had one too.
but I just called the first 4 speakers up.
okay.
I just called the first 4. I mean, we can get a long line if you want, but we'll do the first 4. And Ms. Tweedy will read the admonishment.
The board invites public comment on the district's business in general and on any agenda item in specific. All speakers must observe the rules of decorum. Speakers must fill out a card listing name, address, and topic and hand it to the board secretary prior to the president calling the meeting to order. Speakers must make their comments in no more than 3 minutes. If necessary to accommodate all speakers within a 30-minute overall limit, the president may shorten each speaker's time. Constructive criticism is in order. Rudeness, vulgarity, disruptive conduct, or remarks disrespecting personal dignity are not in order and will not be allowed. Under the Arizona Open Meeting Law, the governing board cannot discuss or act on any items not listed on the agenda. Board members may respond to criticism made by a speaker and ask staff to review a matter or ask if that matter will be put on a future agenda.
Thank you. All right, please state your name for the record.
Maria Leyva. Oh, okay. So, President Frank, Governing Board, Superintendent Finch, and guests. First, I want to thank everybody in the audience for waiting 2.5 hours to speak. I know in the past that public comments have been moved to the front, but they were not for tonight's meeting. Regarding the Red for Ed movement, I believe that it has been a long time coming. And a wonderful video was posted by our board president, the Red for Ed movement, and Dr. Finch, I'd love to have you organize the district office in a Red for Ed, because they're the only slide missing in that video. So that would be wonderful if everybody professes and you do sign the proclamation about the Red for Ed movement. Like you stated, I did, when you requested, Dr. Finch, I did provide for you the Arizona Education Association and Arizona Educators United version of the proclamation, of which I have, because there's both versions online available in the board book. And I'm a little dismayed that it went through the cleaners and went through the lawyers, and the whereases began every paragraph. And the part where the association president is supposed to sign at the bottom of the proclamation was deleted. So I feel a little betrayed by you, since you asked for it and I presented it to you, and as soon as it went through the cleaners, that unless it got taken off of the bottom, I'm not sure if you can respond, but there's only the board president and the governing board there, so an explanation would be great.
Okay.
That's from another district.
Right.
Just another example.
Okay, thank you. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Terry Overfield.
Okay.
President Frank, board members, Superintendent Dr. Finch, and fellow educators. For years, educators have put their students first. We are the first to make sure our students have supplies, snacks, wonderful rooms, a treasure chest of goofy toys, and penny candy. God bless Oriental Trading Company. We spend extra time taking our students on field trips, coming in early for makeup quizzes and stay late for tutoring, or going to games and plays just because our students ask us to. However, all these firsts come at a cost paid by a group of people that are overlooked and often forgotten and almost always come in second, the educator's kid. He's the one who gives up most and gets the least. Today, there is a Deer Valley educator's son that is going without. He is going without new shoes, hasn't been to the dentist in over a year, and is making his own dinner, leftovers. His mother isn't there to ask him how his day was or to give him a hug. As an educator, I've missed a lot of my son's firsts. I missed his first time he rolled over, his first step, and his first word. Why? Because I had to work for a second job my first 10 years of teaching. We sacrificed. He sacrificed. When I came to Deer Valley, I was bringing 17 years of experience and 2 master's degrees. What did I get? A $27,000 a year pay cut. Be the first board to use 100% of all the money available to you for our professional educators, because we are the first to greet, to teach, to nurture, and yes, like me, console a kid the first time their best friend commits suicide.
That's what they put on their statements that it was about. That's the information that I have. Was there a question from a board member? Okay. All right. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Janine Swan. President Frank and board members and Dr. Finch and fellow members of our Deer Valley team, I want to share a different perspective. An article was published in the Arizona Republic yesterday. It was an article that I didn't know until yesterday that my son wrote. Support helped Arizona student become an MIT professor. Today I'm a professor of chemical engineering at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, but I was an Arizonan first. Growing up in Phoenix, my mother stayed at home and my father sold cars. Neither could have foreseen my future or helped me navigate the professional obstacles I've had to overcome to get where I am today. Instead, I benefited from public educators in the state of Arizona who recognized what talents I had and nurtured them. Marie Miller, who put me in an honors program in 3rd grade. Donna McCarthy, who bused me to the high school for geometry classes while I was still in 8th grade. Doug Rickard, who let me sit on the floor hour after hour in his AP chemistry lectures when there was no room in my schedule to fully enroll in the course. And James Baguettes, who told me I should go to graduate school to earn my PhD. I thank them today because they were more than just teachers. They were mentors, supported and empowered by a community that once valued public education as the surest way for children to fulfill their potential. That the state of Arizona has spent the last decade decimating public education through budget-cutting measures is a great shame. I never would have made it without the mentorship I received in Arizona public schools.
Thank you. I'm sorry, but your time is up. But thank you for your comments.
Ade Oda. I am a 4th-year ELA teacher over at Barry Goldwater High School. To be a teacher, one has to have a little shame, obviously. I don't know about the meaning of the word. I've dressed up as a flamingo, pandas, inflatable flailing arm tube man, rock stars, my personal favorite, SpongeBob, and obviously dresses. We do whatever it takes to make our students laugh and learn and grow and have fun, whatever it takes. We were right today not because we are greedy. We were right today because we sacrifice our lives for our students. We spend countless weekend hours grading and lesson planning and making sure our kids learn. We attend plays and sporting events and art shows. We take Spirit Week very seriously, some a lot more than others. But we do so much because we love our job. But Arizona does not love their teachers. I love my job. I love my kids. I love seeing them grow and mature. I love making them laugh. I love teaching them that life shouldn't be taken too seriously. But I don't love the financial sacrifice myself and every teacher in this room has to do just to survive. I don't love how my classrooms are overfilled. I don't love how school funding goes down every year and tax cuts go up. And I especially don't love how teachers flee DVUSD for better pay around the valley and around the state, and especially outside of the state. This is why I support Red for Ed. Thank you.
I'd like to call the next three speakers, Kelly Fisher, Nick Martin, and Adriana Zazueto Jordan. Kelly Fisher, Nick Martin, Adriana, I hope I got the name right, Zazueta Jordan. Okay.
Hello, President Frank, members of the school board, Dr. Finch, and all my amazing colleagues out here in red tonight. I stand before you as a proud member of the Arizona Education Association, a proud administrator who is somewhat excited and somewhat exhausted of a 43,000 member group that started 1 month ago called Arizona Educators United. And most importantly, I stand in front of you as a kindergarten teacher at Las Brisas Elementary School. Those of you who know me know I love every single student that walks through my door, and I love what I get to do in my classroom every day. And that's why I'm standing here tonight to ask you to sign the statement of support for the Red for Ed movement. It's not because of a red shirt. It's not because of a walk-in or a walk-out. It's because of the students that we all serve every single day. We want to make education better for them. I teach kindergarten, and my students have a long way to go, and I want a bright future for them. The intent of Red for Ed is to restore funding to the 2008 levels so students have what they need to learn and grow. It's to pay teachers what they deserve so every child has a qualified, certified teacher who's not working 2, 3, or 4 extra jobs. And it's to pay all those ESP who, let's face it, we all know we couldn't do our jobs without them. So I urge you tonight to sign this statement of support because every child in Deer Valley, and frankly, every child in Arizona, deserves a bright future in public education.
Thank you. All right, please state your name for the record. Please state your name for the record.
Liz Martin.
Thank you.
Good evening, President Frank, Governing Board, community members, fellow teachers, and my student who is here as well. I stand before you today, Governing Board, to ask you to endorse Arizona Educators United's Red for Ed movement. We are a nonpartisan group of educators who are fighting for student-centered funding. In as little as 4 weeks, we have grown to 41,000 members. But we are looking to you. In our district, we have teachers, educators, administrators, parents, community members, and students wearing red, going to events, and standing in solidarity with one another. But we are looking to you now, our governing board and superintendent, as our leaders and as our visionaries, to stand in solidarity with all of us. We need you to unify us as a district. I want to close my last 30 seconds with a quote from MLK, in which he says, "The time is always right to do what is right." Governing Board, do what is right and endorse the Red for Ed movement. Stand in solidarity with your community. Stand in solidarity with your parents. Stand in solidarity with your faculty. Stand in solidarity with your teachers. And most importantly, stand in solidarity for our students. Thank you.
Please state your name for the record.
Adriana Zazueta Jordan, and I'm reading a letter on behalf of Douglas from Deer Valley High School. The public believes that the biggest obstacle for teachers to enjoy a living wage is the governor and the legislature. For Deer Valley teachers, that is not true. Our biggest opponent is our district. When the voters passed 301, they intended all the money to go to teachers. They did not intend the district to use the money as a large portion of that money for travel, conferences, hiring support personnel, for lessons works, loads, for the district office. Deer Valley is experiencing concern over teacher recruitment and retention. I believe I just identified one of the major reasons why the district has issues. In short, people want to work where their employers honor commitment made to them by the district and care. It is the belief of many of the teachers that the district could receive an additional $50 million from the state and would not make any difference in our salaries. Most of the teachers in the district know that would not make a difference in our salaries to benefit because the district management would not find other uses for the money.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, but your time is up, but thank you. So those were the speakers who I specifically identified, Red for Ed, on their the papers that they turned in prior to the beginning of the meeting. All other speakers will be allowed to speak at the conclusion of the meeting because these were the only ones that identified this specific agenda item on the paperwork that they turned in. So let's open this up for discussion. Mrs. Ordway.
Yes. So I'm just going to talk about the signing at the bottom, and I know these were drafts from wherever they came from. I would feel much more comfortable if we do decide to whichever one we choose, if we choose whatever, that there are signature spots for 5 people and or 7 people, I'm guessing, superintendent and our association president. Oh, sorry. Sorry, whoa. That was... I'm awake.
I can't hear her. So
7 signature lines for everyone to sign. For if you have one person, it does not show the solidarity that I think we're trying to have across. And if we do pass this, one more suggestion would be when we read it, that we could read it all together.
Okay, so Mrs. Ordway, you are requesting signature lines for all board members, should the board choose to, and also to read it together. Is
Plus
that
the superintendent and the
right?
Yes.
Okay.
And I prefer the second one, but I don't want to.
Okay. Thank you for those suggestions. Other.
I've got plenty, so I can wait.
Okay, Ms. Tweedy.
I do agree with you, Ms. Ordway. I think everyone's signature. My only question is, I don't view these 2 documents as the same. One's a letter, so I mean, in my view, a letter, I'm not suggesting we don't all sign it, but if we were to adopt a resolution, I don't know if the board adopts a resolution if traditionally you would have other people other than the board. I would think on this document, and that might be a question for legal counsel, I don't know.
Well, I don't think this is traditional at all, because normally if we do any kind of a proclamation, it's a signature on it.
Yeah.
So I'm finding that this is somewhat unique, where whether it's called a resolution, a statement, or whatever we're allowed to call it, if we so choose to call it something, that the signatures need to be together.
We have done 5 in the past.
No, I'm not saying that. Do we normally have the DVA president and the superintendent sign our resolution? I mean, can they?
Well, I don't know. I believe they would be able to, but this isn't a normal thing. We've not ever...
No, if they're allowed, I'm agreeing with you. I'm just stating one's a letter and one's a resolution. I don't know if the requirements are different.
I'm just saying we've never done anything like this, so there is no background to it. So that would have to
So
be...
it's a unique situation. Mrs. O'Brien, did you have... Okay, Mrs. Fisher?
Okay. This is where I become a killjoy and then hopefully at some point become a champion. There was also a webinar that they had today specifically on this topic. And it talked a lot about legally what we can do, legally what we should do, ways that we can support our staff, and what we so I mean, it went in depth into a lot of different areas, including our parent groups and our PTAs and our boosters. Now, one of these is and I'm only because Ms. Leva had said that it used to have the whereases. Are they? I haven't gone line by line and compared them. Was one of them put into my first question is, was one of them put into a letter format and it originally was the same as the whereas one? Okay, the second question, the second problem I have, the whereas one is the one that Dr. Finch got from Phoenix Union High School District. I do not want to mirror after Phoenix Union. They get much more money than we do. They put a lot less money in their teachers and in their, and I don't want to piggyback off of that. I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that. So I think we need to adjust. But when I went through the webinar, it had several attorneys were there. Denise Lowell-Britt was there. Jennifer McLennan was there. ASBA's attorney, Chris Thomas, was there. And where this becomes a concern is because, you know, we all have different groups and we all kind of come together because we have to. This state is just not, it's not just this state. This nation is having issues with funding education, but our state particularly. When we have, let's say, Red for Ed and SOSAZ and the different ones, if at any point one of those groups gets something on the ballot, we have a problem because we have now put a resolution, we have used district resources, so they went a lot into that depth of what that could be. They went into school resources, which is 15.515. They went into association activities, which actually hits more towards the associations, which is 514. They talked a lot about expressly prohibiting us from using students. They gave a lot of really great recommendations of don't give stuff to kids, don't even hand it to the kids, hand it to their parents, let their parents do it. So it was an extremely informative webinar and a question and answer session. So I started thinking about this, thinking again, you know, we really do. They also went into some of the AG opinions, right to strike, things like that. I believe they're going to be putting the recording out there if anybody wants to watch it. I do believe it was very informative. So I started thinking, okay, well, if we as the governing board and the superintendent have to in some way not do a quote-unquote resolution specifically like is written here, what can we do? And I don't know, because I don't want to do anything that's in the end going to hurt the teachers rather than help them. I just don't think that helps anyone. I didn't write it because I thought about it all day and I, you know, went through different things and looked at different statutes. I would almost prefer that we write a resolution and I would like for us all to read it together and sign it and come up with language stating that we will individually, and they did recommend that board members individually take part in Red for Ed, because then it's not a quorum and we're still doing it. We're still fighting for it, we're still going to the legislature, but I would like for us to write a resolution that at the end of all this, whatever money we get, that we are dedicated to putting it directly into them. And I then at that time, I mean, I guarantee it's never going to be on an election. There's no possibility of us doing anything with an election that says that we're going to violate if anything hits the ballot. So individually, I would like to see us fight, but as a board, I would like us to have a resolution that says what we're going to do. And it may even say, you know, individually whereas that we can acknowledge that we have had these shortages. We can acknowledge that because it's just the truth. We can acknowledge that we individually will seek to get increased funding because we're doing it individually. It's not the board. There's no way that we're going against anything. And that with whatever we get, that we as a board are resolved that we will put those funds to the appropriate places. So that's just my concern. Prior to us making any decision, I would really like for all board members to watch the webinar. It's not very long. It's like an hour and a half. It's very informative, though. And then I would like us to come up with some really good language to make sure that we are following legal compliance and that our whole goal is to honor this team right here. That's just my preference.
Ms. Tweedy?
Well, and I read the same legal opinions as Ms. Fisher. But what I guess I came to a different conclusion about what we should do. As I read both of the documents, the one that came out of Phoenix Union was very careful to say that they supported the efforts of participating through as opposed to affiliating Phoenix Union directly with Red for Ed. I did look at the letter that we were also given, which actually says we will stand with the Red for Ed movement. I think that could be a dangerous thing for the district to adopt based on the legal opinions I read. But what I thought we could do was change that letter to say, for those who are advocating for the Red for Ed demands, like we're supporting the people advocating for the demands, not endorsing them as a group should they form a political alliance, or if they are with SOS and they have something on the ballot, that puts the district in legal jeopardy. But I do think Phoenix Union, it looks like went by an attorney with theirs, because I don't see any reference to the... No, that was my thoughts. So I thought whatever we were most comfortable with, I wanted to support this to the greatest extent we legally can. So I was hoping we could choose one that we liked, and if we needed to make modifications to the language, run it by our attorney, of course, before we do it.
And I had similar thoughts to Ms. Tweedy and Ms. O'Brien. It looks like you have something you would like to.
If I could also
Please.
add to it, I read both the legal opinions and also watched the webinar that Mrs. Fisher was referring to. One of the concerns, and I really had hoped that the slideshow would come out before the meeting tonight, because this webinar was this afternoon at 2 o'clock. Right, there's a PowerPoint. There were some really great points. One of the things that it talks about is there is a statute where governing board members and the superintendent and possibly our cabinet members or our principals, depending on how they show support or what they do, could be violating Arizona state statute. So I want to first thank Dr. Finch for his leadership last week in trying to make sure that our employees are supported, yet that we do it in a way that does not put us on the 10 o'clock news or in the newspaper. It is important that we stand together and do it in a way that does not get us in trouble or the movement in trouble. So having said that, one of the attorneys on the call today had some concerns regarding the resolution that Phoenix Union passed, and I also believe that's the one that Pendergrast passed. But she did comment that she had made some changes to it. So I have not been able to see that yet. They promised that along with the webinar and the PowerPoint, that her recommended changes to the resolution she saw, that they would share those. So I wish I had that to share tonight. I don't. I've looked like 10 times while we're here in the meeting because it's 10 o'clock. I was hoping somebody was working late, like us.
No, just us.
I'll be there.
So I want to pass a resolution as a board member that supports our teachers, our staff, our parents, our students in a way that keeps us all out of trouble and lets you know that we're standing with you. So I would ask that we look at that resolution when it comes across. I'm happy to forward it to Dr. Finch or whoever gets it first so that we can all look at it. And
I'll be at ASBA tomorrow.
and have this on the next, maybe this could also be added to the 17th for wordsmithing,
Right.
and then that way it would be on the 24th for a vote.
And
Because
perhaps-
tonight is only a discussion item.
Right. Ms. Tweedy?
Could we put the letter and this resolution and the one that you get, could we run all three of these by our attorney and put them on as an action item? We can vote for action option A, B, or C at the next meeting.
I guess before we send anything to the attorney, I'd really like for us to look at the one that has, in
Language.
essence, been written by an attorney. It's
Okay.
already been through an attorney, and actually, she's one of our district attorneys.
Okay.
And then we don't have to pay additional fees
For an attorney.
for an attorney.
Okay, and then put it on as an action item?
And then it would be, I would move that we discuss it on the 17th again, and have it on the 24th for an action item.
The only thing is I think we're getting kind of far into the movement to have, I mean, I would like, I would say let's try to adopt something at the next meeting. Maybe Dr. Finch could put it out in an update because
Then
That
we,
is
we
the
hold
next
on.
meeting.
Hold on.
So
Hold on, please.
Would it sounds like, from what I'm hearing, we are all in support. We all want to support
Yes.
as much as we can that it's legal, but we have to be in legal compliance. So my thought is perhaps we could have a special meeting of the governing board prior.
On the 17th,
Um,
because we're already meeting on the 17th.
well, I'm wondering if the language is available tomorrow or Thursday, if we could meet on Friday. I mean, I know it's an extra meeting, but I think it's important to adopt sooner rather than later.
Well,
I'm just throwing that out there as a possibility, rather than waiting until the 17th.
and if people, I mean, if that's something that we're going to decide to do, it could also be done telephonically if you can't
Sure.
be in this building.
We could do
as
a.
long as someone's here, we can do it that way. But
So yeah, I would be willing to come in to
So
facilitate
how
a
are we
telephonic
going
meeting.
to discuss it and draft it?
We would all have to have copies of it and discuss it if we wanted to discuss it telephonically.
You'd have to
In
send
another
your
meeting, so like a
corrections to me.
Thursday meeting and then a Friday meeting, or?
no, we could discuss it and then adopt it. I mean, I'm assuming we all want to express support to the greatest extent we legally are able.
So I have a technical question, I think, and I hope, Dr. Finch, that you can answer this. So if the letter comes out tomorrow and you distribute it to us all, if we forward back our comments to you and Sheila, you can put that in a draft as long as they're not kind of conflicting, or you can say we've got two different sentences for this point, and it can be sent back out to all of us, correct?
Correct. You just can't comment to each other.
as long as we're not commenting.
Correct.
So
You can send your stuff to me. Correct.
But we can all send our stuff to you, and then you can do a revised version and send it back out to us.
Correct.
As long as we're not discussing.
Correct.
It's quite simple to not discuss, although it's
But
harder
there's also
to-
language on polling the board, putting an item together and polling. Does that fall under polling the board? No.
No, because we're not giving our opinion on anything. We're
I get
just
Ms. O'Brien's
wordsmithing.
point is we don't want to get him in trouble either.
Right, but we're not.
I'm not asking for your vote on it.
Correct.
Or
You're
your
not
thumbs up or
asking
thumbs
a
down.
Asking for our
Just
input
feedback.
on
Correct.
the document.
Yep.
You put the document together and it goes back out. And please understand that I feel your frustration, but there are laws. No, I feel your frustration that it's hold on, that it's 5 after 10. And we're talking about this, and you want it approved tonight. It was not put on the agenda for approval tonight.
Can't approve it even if
It
we
was
wanted
put
to.
on the agenda for discussion. What?
So I would like to respond to that. Our last meeting was in March prior to spring break. The movements.
So
Respectful when people are trying to support you.
we are looking for a way to do this so that we are in compliance with the state laws. To be in compliance, to be out of compliance, doesn't do you all or us any favors as a district. So we want to adopt it. We want to adopt something that says we stand with you. And so if we can do it that way and have a meeting on Friday.
That is,
fine.
yeah, that is legally compliant. This was placed on the agenda at my request. I know that at the last rally at the Capitol in a couple of weeks ago, you had 4 board members there. I know Mrs. Ordway had her car painted. I had my car painted. We're all sitting up here in red, and it's 10 after 10, and we really do want to support you. But as Mrs. O'Brien said and Ms. Fisher, we have to be legally compliant. I'm willing to come in for an extra meeting on Friday. I work for.
Well, and then there's the legal. We have to
24-hour
make sure there's a
notice.
24-hour notice.
Right.
So there's a lot of technical things that we have to do to make sure that we don't do things wrong, to take the emphasis off what you're trying to do, as opposed to being on the news because Deer Valley did it wrong, so we got in trouble, and then this whole cause goes down.
So we have to have 24 hours for a meeting that has to be posted. I'm sorry, that's not 24 hours.
No, it's not a math teacher.
So maybe you're not teaching math. Okay. So so what we are, I think it sounds like what we've agreed on is that when the version comes out from ASBA, that we will give our feedback to Dr. Finch. There will be a revised version, and then there will be a telephonic meeting, could be in person, to look at it and then vote.
What
Is
time
that
will we
what I'm
be looking
understanding?
to have that meeting on Friday?
I am willing to be open to people's schedules. I have to look at my work schedule. I know I'm scheduled to be at a school, a Deer Valley school for my work Friday morning, so it would have to be either before then, or I would have to take personal vacation time to conduct the meeting in the middle of the day on Friday, which I am willing to do.
Well, we have to have time, though. We have to have time
I
to
work
get it
till
and
4.
look at it and get it back.
So I'm willing to work with y'all's schedules.
What time is the earliest you can meet, Jenny?
Reasonably, probably 7 o'clock.
Oh, no. Oh, sorry. 7, 8. That won't
7
be enough
a.m.
time to. I hear what Kim's saying. I'm sorry. I meant after you've done your work.
So I would finish up at that school. I think I'm scheduled there till 11. So I would either have to come in on my lunch break, or I would have to take vacation time.
Okay, so what? Give us a time.
So noon, 12:30.
Okay. Whatever meeting for Friday. No, okay, today's Tuesday. That might still work. I was off a day. Because we have to have 24 hours. So if we get it tomorrow, if we don't have it by 11, I'll be at ASBA. I'll ask them for it and get it to you. So if we'll send it, Dr. Finch sends it out to us immediately and we get it back to him, how much time do you need? Could we post by Thursday at noon?
And then I know Miss Tweedy's schedule.
Well, that could be a floating time.
You can post tomorrow for Friday.
So if we didn't get it back and we wanted to do if we didn't get it back until Thursday, or we couldn't post until Thursday at 3:03, well then I guess.
Well,
then
we
have our
could
meeting
post
after
with
that.
just a topic, but the problem is
Have to put time.
Right. So
Yeah, so Ms. Tweedy also has, you're not available until the afternoon, correct?
I work till 4.
okay. So again, it could be a floating. It can be
Right.
a floating time. So we could call it 4 o'clock on.
Yeah.
Right.
You actually leave your district at 4?
Yeah, I mean, I could take the call in the car. I mean,
Okay.
Right, because you could be telephonic.
Right.
So maybe we just do it safer than sorry and make it
Make it 4 o'clock on Friday?
4 o'clock.
Okay. Okay. All right. So we do have some additional public comments. All right. So I will call, when I call your name, please make your way to the podium. Lauren Lichardi, Lacey Fricker, Eric Bolas, Weston Varney, or Vanoy, I'm sorry, Weston Vanoy, Christopher Zent. And I will call the remaining speakers after these speakers have spoken. And it's still at 1.5 minutes. I apologize for the shortened time frame. All right, please state your name for the record.
Lauren Lichardi.
Okay.
Lauren Lichardi.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. I was encouraged to share my story with you tonight after sharing this with my friends and family over the weekend. Sorry. I was encouraged to share my story with you tonight after sharing this with my friends and family over the weekend. Last week I made what has probably been the hardest decision of my life, but I also know it will be one of the best decisions that I've made. I rejected my contract and resigned my position as a special education teacher for the next school year, with no plans to continue teaching. Teaching is not what it was when I started 9 years ago. Every year there have been more demands, more expectations, more stress, and less time to do it all in. I have justified it for too long, saying I wasn't in it for the money, and that it's fine to spend all of this extra unpaid time prepping because I love my students and I wanted to show I was dedicated to them and to my job. In moving to Arizona, I knowingly took a very large pay cut, but with the hopes that it would be different here. Unfortunately, it was not. It was worse. I have worked more hours this last school year than any of my previous years for less pay. With this pay cut and increase in hours, I finally realized it's too much, and I cannot and will not continue to work like this. The reason I moved to Arizona was to spend time with my family and to be an active part of my young nephew's life. I've had to turn down opportunities to spend time with him because I had work to do. Or if I did decide to spend time with him, it meant I was not working. But having to make the choice between work time or family time is not okay. There was nights when I was babysitting my nephew, sometimes the only time I'd see him the week, that I would be hoping that he would go to sleep early in order for me to give me time to work. That is not okay. I spent this last weekend deciding to prioritize my time with my family. I decided it was not going to work this weekend in order to spend time with my siblings and nephew. Saturday was spent hanging out with my family. I got to watch my brothers play together in a GCU alumni game, and that was the first time I'd seen them to play together in years. And I got to watch my nephew watch his dad play soccer for the first time.
Okay, I did give you a little extra time. Go ahead and finish.
Thank you.
Go ahead and finish.
Sunday, my brothers came over to the pool with my nephew to hang out and go swimming. That was the best weekend I've had in a very long time. But it came at a cost. Not working then meant that there were hours of work to be completed at another time. I can no longer justify to myself that I am okay with this life. I love teaching. I love teaching what it was and what it is supposed to be. But I am tired of not feeling like that I am able to be the teacher I want to be. I am constantly stressed about what I have to do and where in my day I'm going to get it done. I feel like I am failing my students because I'm not able to prepare and present lessons the way I would like to. My small groups are not as small as they should be in order to be beneficial to the students. I feel like I'm not able to reach them at their own individual levels. I have ideas on how I want to change my instruction, but there's never enough time to plan and prep for these changes. I can no longer justify to myself that I am okay with the income I make, especially here in Arizona. I have a master's degree in endorsement in autism and an endorsement to teach English as a second language, and I cannot support myself. I am so grateful to my parents who have been helping me out financially. I don't know where I'd be without them because I am not able to work a second job. Being a special education teacher, I don't have a set schedule. My schedule changes weekly depending on the meetings I have. I looked into it, but it's hard to find a second job when my schedule is never consistent. Plus, I spend most nights working on IEPs. Most of them take an average of 6 to 7 hours to write. Not the best job candidate. So I've struggled every month to pay my bills, maxed out credit cards trying to get by, and I will not do it anymore. I don't know what I'm going to do after the school year ends, and right now I am more okay with the unknown than with the idea of continuing to teach for another year. Thank you for this opportunity to address you guys this evening and for listening to my experiences and my reasons for having to leave a profession that I have loved for so very long. Thank you.
Thank you for your years of service to Deer Valley, and I'm very sorry that this is a decision you feel that you have had to make. I certainly can relate. I had to make a similar decision 3 years ago, so thank you very much. Our next speaker, please. Please state your name for the record.
Lacey Fricker. I am a counselor at Boulder Creek High School and a parent of a kindergartner at Gavilan Peak, and I'm here tonight to represent the counselors in Deer Valley Unified School District. We are here to support the Red for Ed movement, but I'm also up here to discuss performance pay. We support the teachers' request for 100% of Fund 13 to increase the amount of money they take home for their performance pay. While speaking about performance pay, I would like to address the fact that counselors and other certified professionals receive a much lower amount for performance pay than teachers. Last year, teachers received $2,250 for performance pay. However, counselors received only $1,250. We understand that non-classroom teachers cannot be paid out of the classroom site fund. However, many districts find a way to pay their counselors, nurses, psychologists, etc. through other funds. Aguafia, Buckeye, Dysart, Glendale Union, Paradise Valley, Peoria, Phoenix Union, and Tempe School District all pay their certified staff the exact same performance pay amount. We respectfully request that the board and budget committees consider equitable performance pay amongst teachers and other certified professionals, including us. In closing, and this is a touchy subject, but whether or not folks want to acknowledge or recognize it, the mental health crisis we are seeing in our youth is real and it's getting worse. The students are coming to us more anxious, more depressed, and more stressed than ever before. This past weekend, we had a horrible, sad tragedy with a student from our school. And who do you think was the first on the ground Monday morning? The district flight team, a group of trained school counselors and school psychologists that we asked to help our schools manage its response to crisis. Administrators turned to this group to inform and support teachers and students and provide grief counseling services in the midst of tragedy. There are not enough of us to ever hope to do something proactive to get ahead of this mental health crisis. If we continue to be undervalued, underpaid, and understaffed, then it is going to continue to be a series of band-aids and reactions to situations that come our way. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Please state your name for the record. Okay, I will ask, I have not been cutting speakers off. I do realize you've waited a very long time to speak, and I understand you have strong feelings about this, but if you could please hold your applause until the end. Otherwise, we're going to be here a very long time. We've already been here a long time. So I just ask that of you, if you would do that, please. So next speaker.
I'll be quick, I promise. Eric Bolus, Deer Valley High School, President Frank, School Board, Dr. Finch. Just wanted to share with you real quick, the Arizona Auditors General, that Deer Valley School District, our average salary is $45,000, where the state average is $48,000. The amount of the Prop 301 money is $1,000 less than the state average. So if Arizona is $10,000 behind the national average, Deer Valley teachers are $13,000 behind the state or the national average, which puts us in a position to go to different districts, to go to different states, which we see year after year after year. We were told how to behave by our administrators during the Red for Ed movement, and we were told to respect the taxpayers. To respect the taxpayers is to give us 100% of our 301 money. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Ms. Tweedy, would you like to respond?
Yeah, I just want to make it clear that I voted no on the 42%.
We can't respond.
Yeah, I can. It was criticism.
No, you were not personally called out. We can't respond.
Next speaker, please.
Weston Vanoy.
Please state your name for the record.
Weston Vanoy.
Okay, thank you.
Board members, thank you all for being here. You guys all say you're Red for Ed. What I'm going to ask you to do is put it to a vote on the next meeting and give us 100% of that 301 money. That will put me, and I know a lot of my colleagues, in a better position. We will feel more appreciated, and I actually want to see proof. So you say you're Red for Ed, please prove it.
Thank you. All right. Our next speaker, please. Please state your name for the record.
Christopher Zent, Deer Valley High School. Thank you. Governing board members, President Frank, Dr. Finch. I love Deer Valley, and I love teaching our great kiddos. I love teaching alongside so many Deer Valley Unified School District graduates, like the two men that preceded me. I live with them, I coach with them, I teach with them, and I love doing it. And it's great because this district produces great kids and future members of our society. I dream, as I think about earlier this evening, we honored those people that had been here, the longevity recognition. I think about being here 20, 30, and 40 years. I'll be pretty old. And serving those great kiddos and helping them and seeing what they're going to become and maybe even teaching alongside them in the future. But the stark reality is that when I look around, I see many of my peers considering leaving, people that have been Deer Valley Unified School District students and employees, and it breaks my heart. And I start wondering if I will see those days when those students graduate that I love dearly and passionately serve. I look and see, again, as the numbers have been very clear, we're trailing other schools around the state by about $3,000. Making sure all that 301 money goes directly to teachers would do a great deal to alleviate that strain and help us consider staying here. There are alternatives. We don't want to exercise them, but if we need to, we will.
Thank you. We have another speaker. I think he was the last one. All right, so I will call the next set of names. Please make your way to the podium. Vicki Jones, Alex Porter, Bill Dugan, Christy Cooper, Maria Leva. You had another topic to speak to. So please make your way to the podium. Please state your name for the record.
Vicki Jones.
Thank you. If you could speak into the microphone,
Okay, Vicki Jones.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Go ahead.
All right. President Frank, Governing Board, Dr. Finch, and guests. Teachers in the Deer Valley District have never seen 100% of the 301 money intended for teachers. It is our understanding that Fund 13 was on the board agenda this past year and only 2 board members voted to support it. How disappointing. I have a copy of this budget for each of you, given to President Maria Leva of the DVEA. She received it last week. It shows where the district has chosen to spend the money that could go towards salaries. This has gone on since the beginning of 301, so several years. Teachers are leaving the district. Future teachers have been discouraged from applying in Deer Valley District. Please take an honest look at Fund 13. Put it back on the agenda and give your teachers 100% like many other districts. I also want to mention that in this room right now is a former Deer Valley student who was employed as a teacher in this district. He and his wife have 3 children. Both were employed in this district. They did not sign their contracts. I just found that out, and I'm sick about it. We are losing too many teachers. Something needs to change.
Thank you. Please state your name for the record.
My name's Alex Porter. I'm a first grade teacher at Arrowhead Elementary. President Frank, thank you for your time. Dr. Finch, thank you for your time. Board members, thank you for your time. When I hear about teachers working 3 to 4 jobs, I say, thank God I only work 2. Come to Cracker Barrel, support me. But from what I understand, from what I've seen, we could be getting 100% of this Prop 301 money. I would love to see what this gentleman back there said, a commitment to it. I would love to see it. Peoria, Cave Creek, Dysart, Paradise Valley, and Washington districts give their teachers 100%. Please give us our money. Board members, my challenge to you is please keep fighting for us. Please help us keep our teachers. And Dr. Finch, my challenge to you as we're making this moment in history, please stand with us. If you have an audience with our governor, please let him know that a fraction of us are here representing thousands working night jobs, second jobs, third jobs, fourth jobs. And teachers will take action, many of us. Tonight, our governor was saying teachers are playing games. Please do not let him bully you. Please make us proud, Dr. Finch. Thank you.
All right, I think I know your name, but please state it for the record anyway. Hi, Christy.
Hi. My name is Christy Cooper. Good evening, President Frank and school board members. I'm here to ask the school board to find a way to pay its teachers a decent salary increase. A start would be to give our teachers 100% of the 301 Fund 13. It is very upsetting to see it carry forward year after year of almost $1 million that should have gone to increase our teachers' salaries. Surrounding districts are already giving 100% of their Fund 13 to raise their teachers' compensation, increasing each teacher's salary over $3,000. The increase to 100% would give each teacher in our district at least $2,000 increase, which means teachers have lost out on about $34,000 over the last 17 years, which is almost a teacher's yearly salary. Districts that are already paying their teachers 100% are also giving a 3% increase to their teachers this year. Our teachers are leaving our district in record numbers. Can we afford to lose any more of our experienced, highly trained, dedicated teachers? It is time for action before it is too late. Please add this to the agenda and show the teachers in this district that they are valued. Thank you.
President Frank, Governing Board, Superintendent Finch, and guests, I'm here tonight to ask you, the Governing Board, to place on a future agenda the allocation of Fund 13 from the Classroom Site Fund, better known as Prop 301 money. The Deer Valley Unified School District stands out among all the neighboring districts because we are the only district that does not use 100% of Fund 13 for employee salaries. This has been the practice of Deer Valley Unified School District since 2001. The law allows Fund 13 of the Classroom Site Fund to be used for 6 things, and they are class size reduction, teacher compensation increases, assessment intervention programs, teacher development, dropout prevention programs, teacher liability insurance premiums. This year in Fund 13, of the $6,488,544 available for teacher salaries, only $4,333,361 was used for all teacher salaries, while over $2 million was used for things like out-of-state travel, school city, assessment professional development, summer compensation for professional development in June, and other individual employee salaries. In the past, Deer Valley has tried to pay for other programs like Renaissance, Mandarin, Crossroads, and other programs from Fund 13. Each time, Deer Valley was told by the Auditor General to stop this practice, which it did. Next year, the Classroom Site Fund will increase dramatically. It's a far cry from 2009, when teachers actually had their salaries cut by over 2% due to the recession. DVEA has the support of all of those in the audience and is formally requesting that the allocation percentage of money from Fund 13 be placed on a future board agenda as an action item to be revoted upon. 100% is still better than the current percentage that you are being told. Now more than ever, teachers need to know how much you truly support us. Thank you.
Those are all of the speakers. Okay.
No,
So
I actually have a question.
question?
Yes. In Thursday update, I would like information on whether or not Deer Valley was indeed asked to, by the AG's office, to spend our money differently. My mic is on. I'd like to have information about the statement just made by Maria Leyba that the district was asked by the Attorney General's office to stop spending our Prop 301 monies in the ways we were spending them.
We can find that.
So if you,
We can put that down on Thursday update.
I understand that. So thank you. If you could find that out, as well as, did you receive this handout, Dr. Finch?
No.
You pass mine down. Pass that to Dr. Finch, please. Thank you. Can we also have that information verified and provided in the update to us as well? And then this information that came out, where did this come from?
Mr. Minglerino had it, and
Okay.
Miss Allred had it for your information.
Okay,
Yep.
it was just handed to me during the speaker, so I wasn't sure.
A lot of people
who
were referring to it, so I wanted you to have that
I
information.
appreciate that. I just wasn't sure.
It's basically a visual of this. So we can get this as well, I'm sure. Yep.
Is that okay?
We can get it.
Okay, and if
Can I
that, I
have
mean,
this?
if that's accurate, yes, you can have it. I'll get a copy from. I'll take a picture of someone else's. That would be helpful. Thank you.
Were there any other requests for information?
I just have one other statement because we are allowed to talk back when there's a direct criticism or attack. I do want you guys to realize that we up here are people, and when we're talking, and we're not up here playing mahjong, we're taking notes of who said what we need to address and what we need to talk about. And it is very disrespectful. It's almost hurtful to have someone come through and say, you could at least look at us. I'm sorry, but I can look at you and ignore you, or I can take notes and take heed in what I'm seeing. Earlier I said, I've asked that you stand with us so that we can stand with you. We can be a partnership or not. But a partnership takes both sides working together. And I just really think that we all need to realize there are two sides. And that's it.
Okay. So since we do have budget coming up and we will be discussing that, I would like to place the 301 allocation on a future agenda to be discussed along with the rest of the budget negotiations. I think that is a piece we need to look at. So I am making that request. We will look to see which of the board meetings it is appropriate or it will fit into. So we will be looking at that. Given that I think many of us, including myself, have Red for Ed events to attend tomorrow and we all have jobs to go to, then I would like a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So I move we adjourn. Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I made me question whether or not I'm going to run.